this evening. So the crash has begun. Huge news. Massive EV car market crash has begun. We'll also be talking about, are we headed for a recession? Auto sales explain a lot. And in this live this evening, thank you very much for making it. Starting up just a couple minutes late. Had a little new baby issues. We've also got huge news. Ford CEO just ditched EVs. WTF? What's going on with that? Media will always portray one thing to get some clicks, and we're gonna cut the BS. We'll do some BS busting and get right down to it, to the real deal. Really know let you know what's going on to make sure you save thousands of dollars. That is the goal here on the channel, saving you thousands of dollars, making your car ownership experience all that much better. We're also going to be talking about how, Ford has cut production. Does this spell trouble for Ford? Does it spell trouble for EVs altogether? We'll walk you through all of that. Thank you so much, Outsider Reviews, for making it here. And the others in the live chat, please, if you're watching the show, join the live chat, chat along with the group here. We are a friendly bunch, very helpful auto community. I think we've got one of the best communities here on the internet because we have some people who are very much awake to what's going on about, prices for food going up, crazy inflation, vehicle prices going up, and really we help each other help navigate the whole proper vehicle ownership. I make lots of mistakes fixing vehicles, aesthetically or mechanically, and we let me absorb all that. Toyota MR2 1991, still not running, still just keep piling money into it. We're also going to be talking about cars and trucks that are the best to buy because, well, they depreciate the least. So that's an important way to save thousands. It's not just about when you buy the vehicle. It's also about thinking way ahead about when you're going to sell the vehicle. So cars and trucks that are the best to buy because they depreciate the least. So important. You look at, a lot of Porsche models, for example, Porsche 911s. Some Porsches depreciate and will ruin your bank account, and others you'll keep for 10 years and 15, 20 years and sell it for the price you originally bought it for. We're also going to be talking about Porsche and Corvette prices, how they are crashing. But what's the real story behind that? I don't want anyone getting fooled. We'll talk about cars and trucks to avoid because, well, they will break your bank account. Because all vehicles are expensive now. We're slowly getting pushed out of vehicle ownership and slowly being pushed out of home ownership and slowly moving towards a world, according to Mr. Klaus Schwab, where apparently we'll be very happy owning nothing. So we'll talk a bit about that. We'll save the rant for the end, though. Ford F-150 Lightning, likes and dislikes. So my love-hate relationship with my Ford F-150 Lightning, why I might be selling it, and why you might want to avoid buying it, as well as why you might very much consider buying it. It's all about how you buy, which model you buy, your needs, what you're going to use it for. So we'll be having a nice discussion on that. Richard Macbeth, thank you very much for making it into the chat. And we'll also be talking about, if we have time, the end of democracy or civil war. Beware. These seem to be the two options we're being given these days. So beware. So there'll be a little bit of, if there's time, social and political talk at the end, talk about our freedoms. We'll even maybe talk a little bit about what happened in the last 3 years in regards to loss of freedoms, more government control. So we'll save that to the end. Let's stick to the automotive stuff at the beginning and do my best. I promise I'm going to try tonight to save the rant for the end. Now, I want to, before we start, wish everyone, I want to say Prost to you all. I hope you're having a great evening. I'm going to be talking for these lives. If you know me, I'm Johnny from Johnny's Car Care and Reviews, and I may very well be talking for 2 hours, so I need a little beverage. Got some water off to the side. I will try not to drink loudly this evening. I've got the 2 dogs in the house. Winston's back on the show because Marie here, almost lost my chair. We've got Winston back on the show because Marie's taking care of the newborn baby. JB, thank you so much. I'll have to check out what this fringe member is. I'll have to look into that. So we got Winston here. and he has got his haircut today. I gave him the bath. Marie gave him the haircut. John B, great. Thank you very much. Merry Christmas to all of you. Great point to point out. Merry Christmas, everyone. If you celebrated Hanukkah, I hope you had a fantastic Hanukkah despite all the horrors going on. So Merry Christmas to everyone. And John B, thank you for wishing me Merry Christmas. Outsider Reviews, again, thank you for being in here. Still Phil, thank you for making it. John B, thank you so much. Great. We're going to have a great show tonight. This is going to be entertaining. I've got a lot of information to share. Even going to be talking about freedoms lost and, whether we really should trust what we see in the media, what's going on with the media, people being removed from even the possibility of expressing themselves now through voting. The ability to express yourself openly is being more and more so banned because, if you do it publicly in Europe, you could go to jail for, under the term of hate. So that's a huge drop in freedom of speech. And we used to always be able to at least voice our opinions through how we vote, but we even have Trump being removed from the ballot. And whether you're a Trump supporter or not, we'll get into that. I think that is actually pretty awful that a candidate would be removed from the ballot. When it happens in other countries, we kind of the media says, well, that's not a real democracy and that's what we need to fight for. And then it's happening pretty close to home. It's happening, well, in my backyard. It's happening where you're at. So we'll try to save that rant for then. Let's get this show on the road. Let's talk first about, episode 1. Marie's not here to mark these down, so I'm sorry. I just have to take a moment at the end of each episode. So here, we'll start at the 7-minute mark. And we're going to be talking about huge news. Huge news. Massive EV car market crash has begun. Now, that's the type of headline you're going to get from a lot of media sources. As we move forward and progress, traditional legacy media is dying off. They're scrambling and they're coming out with bigger and bolder headlines. It's part of the game, unfortunately, for their survival. They're just fighting for their survival, but they need to make more and more outlandish claims. And now on YouTube, of course, some of the most outlandish claims come from channels that are AI generated. So someone behind a computer for maybe an hour's worth of time, AI generates some text, has AI generate some photos, they throw it in, and then they come out with articles that were YouTube videos that are very clickable. They make a ton of money. They can make $6,000 to $20,000, even more for these videos. But I want to run through that. This whole notion that the EV car market is like the crash has begun, like EV vehicles are gonna go away. Because if that's, I think maybe a lot of people are clicking on that because that's what they hope. And I'm here to give you the real deal. Don't be fooled by this. For now, EVs are not going away. I'm going to explain why. And it's not because I'm in love with EVs. Heck, one of the topics is going to be about what I dislike about my EV. And try to help you all out with that whole EV, the EVs being forced upon us. So with them being forced, they're not going to disappear. But let's run through all the claims that are being made for these EVs. Now, of course, they are being forced upon us, and that is, I think, something that rubs most everybody the wrong way. But here are some of the big either from YouTube or from big media, legacy media claims that are being made to get clicks. We're going to run through them and then tell you what the real deal is. So used EV prices, they're saying they're down 33.7%, and this is one of the arguments to how the crash has started on EVs and how EVs are going to disappear. Here in Canada, manufacturers are going to be obligated to sell EVs by 2035. It's probably it'll be probably announced last minute, but I bet the United States, there's good chances they're going to be forced to that point as well later down the road. In Europe, it's a guaranteed thing, it looks like. But yes, used EV prices are down 33.7%. Legacy media is right. AI generated videos on YouTube with big bold titles that everyone clicks on. You're right. You're completely right. Used prices are down by 33.7% on EVs from a year ago. But the general market is down. The used market is in general down by roughly 30%. So it's not an argument for how EVs are going to go away, especially not when they're going to be forced upon us. Now, it's not all doom and gloom and, red background scenario. Because, let's go through the facts. Yes, they're down by $17,879 on average. So that's your used EV. And, well, there's the claim being made, and this one's actually, we'll talk about it. Ford has cut EV production in half. That is a big claim that's being made. And there's some truth to it, but really, YouTube, legacy media, they all really need to learn how to read and read into a story and also read properly what gets said by CEOs and companies. So yes, Jim Farley did announce that EV production would get cut in half. However, there's a very important word in what he said, and that's planned EV production. So remember back when we go back to 2021 and 2022, how EVs were so unbelievably hot, and actually they're depreciating the least back in 2020, 2021, 2022. Now they're depreciating the most. But Ford, to meet that demand, originally they were going to make something around 60,000 F-150 Lightnings. And then they said, you know what, we're going to double production. And then they said, you know what, we're going to double production. And they're they got to the point where if you go with their approximate assumed numbers for their original production versus doubling it and then doubling it again, Ford, without giving exact numbers, we're talking about over 300,000 units being produced per year. And so many people have assumed or misread into this and figured, wow. Yeah, I even have colleagues that did this. They're like, wow, Ford is currently only producing roughly 4,000 Lightnings per month, and they're going to cut that in half? EVs are gone. They're done. 2,000 Lightning trucks per month? This is a sign of the end for EV vehicles. But the problem is so many people, colleagues, media, just didn't take the time to read something the way you would if, you're a philosophy major, for example, and the paragraph, you have to read it 10 times before really understanding what it is. And what it is that Ford is cutting back in half that planned production. At one point, Ford was planning on making 600,000 by 2026. If I recall correctly, they're going to be wanting to make 600,000 EV units. Okay, so the Lightning they're not going to make, whether it's 300,000 or 400,000, they're going to cut that in half. It's still a lot of EVs. They don't have a whole lot of choice in making these EVs, and we'll talk about that at the end of this episode, why they don't have a choice in making these EVs for the moment. Now, other claims that are being made is that Tesla has reduced prices 3 times in 1 quarter. Now, this is true. Okay, the Model X decreased by $21,775. And, well, that is a huge decrease. And, they are piling up on lots because they don't sell immediately. But that doesn't mean they're not selling. It just means that they're taking longer to sell. So they're going to continue producing them. This isn't something that's going to be going away. Electric vehicles aren't going to be going away. But this whole idea of absolutely do not buy an electric vehicle, it's a bit of a silly notion, especially when you consider all the whether it's legacy media or whether it's YouTube channels, they're talking about how the prices have decreased. A Model X has decreased by $21,775. So, if anything, that's more reason to buy. However, often when something's seen as very desirable and hard to get your hands on, people rush in. Maybe there isn't a coincidence why Toyota lots have very few vehicles on them. Toyota, I think you could speculate, and I wonder, please, in the comments, what do you think? Is Toyota deliberately keeping inventories low? Meanwhile, their production is at historic record highs? And is it a coincidence that in the North American market, Toyota makes less money per unit than they do elsewhere? but production is at record level highs. So it's about that desirability. I think they want to build desirability behind the brand by keeping inventories low so that they have a chance to raise prices. So I'm a strong believer that Toyota will be raising prices. Now, the Model S, so lots are full, yes, and there are these big price decreases. The Model S decreased by $18,596. And then you've got another one of the models, one of the less expensive models, decreased by $14,716. So, if this was the stock market and you're investing in these vehicles like stocks, you'd be pretty upset right now. And I think a lot of people who bought before these price drops are pretty upset. I bought my Lightning before the price drop, and I can tell you I was upset when that price dropped because, well, it really affected my resale value. The vehicle depreciated in a day because of that news. If you drop it by $10,000, the Lightning, well, guess what? My trade-in, my vehicle has depreciated by $10,000 in a day, and that hurts. Now, EVs are taking 2 times longer to sell than their gas counterparts, and that is completely true. And part of this is because of the infrastructure. I think part of the reason people aren't rushing into EVs is because a lot of the initial adopters, the people that they're a combination of people that like to have the latest and greatest, the new toys. They've bought their vehicles. They've got their electric trucks. They've got their Teslas. So early adopters have bought. And now we've got an issue. You've got an infrastructure that in places is inadequate. Now, don't be fooled. YouTube videos that tell you don't buy an electric vehicle, it's a scam, the infrastructure can't handle it. That's a generalization. And I agree with part of that generalization in certain areas. The infrastructure isn't great. I had a painful experience because in my area, I tried charging on a 50 kilowatt charger for an hour. And yeah, I went from about 32% to 60 some percent, but it wasn't enough. And it was an hour. It was a long stop, but EV technology will advance. There's different battery technologies coming down the road. Ford has a patent so that you can have chargers that charge much faster without the cable melting, because that's one challenge when it comes to charging these EVs. If the charger puts out too much power, too much current, there's a lot of heat that goes along with that current, and it will literally melt the cable. But that's going to get worked on. Remember, original 1918 vehicles, gas-powered vehicles, were not the vehicles they are today. They've become many, many, many folds better. So infrastructure is an issue. So when you hear about that, when you also hear that there's 4,000 EVs parked sitting in lots, that's also true. But that's because dealers need inventory, not Tesla, obviously, but other electric like Ford, Kia, Hyundai, GM, Volvo. It's normal to have vehicles sit on lots. So it's very, the scandalous headline that then is backed by the idea that there's 4,000 unsold EVs in the US is not a sign that, the EVs are going away and there's a complete crash. This massive crash will lead to the death of EVs. No, it's a sign that, like gasoline-powered vehicles, they're just available to go buy on lots. But they are taking twice as long to sell right now as opposed to their gasoline counterparts. But I think a lot of that is, with legacy media and YouTube very much poo-pooing on electric vehicles. I think, and originally, remember, YouTubers and YouTube videos were all back in 2020. It was all about this new electric vehicle and it's the most amazing thing ever and you've got to get one of these. And what have I always said? Regular, more mainstream media or media that independent media that tries to be more like mainstream media will always they look at what are people's emotions and now let's play with them. And they won't swim against the current. So when a new vehicle, a new model comes out, it's a very positive current. You're going down the river towards the lake. The lake's beautiful. It's going to be the best day ever, and that's how they present these vehicles. The hype and the newness, they go with that flow. It's the best vehicle ever. Everyone should get one. This is revolutionary. It's amazing. And then soon as everyone gets to the lake and people are starting to own these, and they've kind of been around and the newness and excitement wears off, what do? I've always said it. They will crap on it to an extreme. So they go from one extreme to this is the best thing since sliced bread, just because it's new and it's going to get them clicks and make them the money, the cheddar. And then I've always said, what happens once the newness wears off? They'll go from one extreme positivity, to extreme negativity. And I'm here about giving you the real deal, no BS, straight up. We'll get to, yes, EVs are forced. That's a big reason why they're going to stick around. Now, they're taking 2 times longer to sell than their gas counterparts, meaning they are stacking up. Tesla, that means they'll be in Tesla, waiting lots, waiting to be purchased. And for the traditional, legacy automakers, it means you're going to see a whole bunch in and on the lots, at the dealers. But you're really going to see the more expensive ones collecting because, well, the reality of it is we're in an economy that is in a recession. They're going to admit it probably 6 to 12 months after. I'd say we've already been in a recession for 6 months, and all my stocks are being built based on that. I'm very, very heavily invested in TMF because I believe they're going to have to drop interest rates. One of 2 things is going to happen. They're either dropping interest rates to save the economy and keep the status quo, or they're just going to they're not going to drop interest rates. They're going to completely ruin the economy, create crisis, to then bring in a new option. Some people would call it a new world order, or just a new way of being, with digital currency, more surveillance, less freedom. We'll save that to the end because that's borderline a rant, but one of those 2 options, and I'm being positive and I'm hoping for the best. If my money's going to disappear anyways, well, I'll bet on the positive option that the economy will be saved with lower interest rates. So I have heavily invested in TMF. Now, and I'm not a financial advisor. This is not financial advice. I'm just sharing with you what I'm doing with my money. And of course, I invested in classic cars because I bought 2 Porsche 911s, a 1999 and a 2000. And I have a Bronco. So if it is going to be the end of the world, well, the Bronco will be a good go everywhere and anywhere vehicle. Now, prices. Media is talking about these crazy prices. You'll have 1 week a story about how there's price cuts, and that's incredible. And then, a week or 2 later, they're talking about how the prices are way too high, and this is why EVs aren't selling. Well, they are collecting on lots, and there is truth to prices being too high because the ones that are collecting on lots, I've gone around to different dealerships. I work at a dealership, have some shares in the co-op, and I can tell you the dealers are upset because the electric vehicles that are sticking around on the lots are the most expensive ones. And that has to do with the economy. It has to do with people's bank accounts. And it also has to do with, people are, now that the early adopters, the initial adopters have just rushed in and thrown all the money they can to make sure that they have the first vehicle. Remember, the first Lightnings were selling used $50,000 over MSRP. What happened? Well, those were early adopters. They're wealthy and they're willing to pay more. And there's a lot of people buying these early electric models because they wanted to resell to someone who is in a hurry and is an early adopter and make money with them. So you've got all the resellers, the wholesalers, the flippers. They're not buying anymore. So that's a huge drop in orders and purchases. You have the initial adopters gone. So who's left? Smart people. People who look at their bank account. People who need to budget. You're not going to buy a platinum Lightning or a crazy fully loaded $100,000 Tesla or Lucid. For Lucid, they're going to have trouble coming into the future because those initial adopters, they're gone. And your product better be pretty incredible and pretty amazing to actually jump into a Lucid vehicle because they're very expensive. And I see at Ford, we're not selling We're selling I don't remember the last time we sold a Platinum Lightning. A Lariat extended range battery, the occasional sale. You know, it still fits within the realm of logic at 100,000, 102,000 Canadian compared to an equally equipped gasoline, petrol-powered version at about, for a 2023, you're looking at about 86,000. If you do enough, if you're spending 8,000 in fuel per year, you're like, yeah, you know what? Eventually, there's a cost savings to buying this extended range Lightning. And I really want the roof and the leather. There's a few of those. There's a few XLT extended range battery, but there is a huge and wild demand for the Pro model, and there's a huge and wild demand for the XLT standard range battery. But yes, for there to be a high demand, it needs to make more sense than gas, because logical people who have a budget, who are affected by the fact that food has increased basically twice as much within 1 year, and that's inflation. And this is, inflation is just another, how governments spend our money, how they print off money. People figure, oh, it doesn't matter. They're printing money. What effect does it have on me? Well, how much they spend is a direct, I believe it was Carl Sagan that said this, what governments spend is it's direct taxation back on you, because it's directly linked to inflation, and you're going to pay for it when you go to buy stuff. So purchase price is an issue with EVs. Lithium is the cost of lithium. It had skyrocketed. It's starting to cool down. So there could be more price reductions coming as cost of materials go down and as new technologies, new batteries come out. So that's a don't be fooled section right there. It's its own topic. If you buy an electric vehicle right now, there is the danger. I highly recommend that you lease. It'll save you thousands, because if you buy and you want to switch in 4 years, but the batteries are no longer lithium, let's say they're not lithium, your regular lithium battery, with all the rare minerals that have their problems in regards to pollution, rarity, and cost. If they go to, let's say Ford is going to be coming out with a lithium iron phosphate battery that charges faster. Well, it charges faster because you can charge at, full potential. You can take the full current coming in from 0% to 100%. That could very well cause your current vehicle to depreciate. So I would highly recommend that you lease these vehicles. Now, price, of course, that's the major hurdle right now, and I do suspect prices are going to go down. From what I'm hearing, Ford has these fixed prices in the window sticker, but there's chances prices could go down more if the cost of fabrication comes down. Now, used EVs, they're being claimed as being unsellable, and how they've dropped by 30%. So don't touch EVs. They're a scam. They depreciate so much. From 2021 to now, or even from 2022 to now, gasoline-powered vehicles have also depreciated. Used vehicles have also depreciated by 30%. Now, I know if you're looking at used lots in your area, you might find that the prices are very similar to what they were 6 months or 12 months ago. But if so, that's just a dealer not being smart enough to rapidly lower their prices to follow the market, and they're going to pay for it later on. They're going to pay high interest now on vehicles they will not be able to sell. Smart dealers that do a lot of, they move metal, and you got to move this metal when you're in a situation. All vehicles right now, gas and electric, used, are going down in value and have been in the last 6 months. So you need to get those units off your lot, take a small loss now to avoid taking a huge loss later. So if you're a dealer, if you're running a used dealership, or if you're managing a used dealership, that's advice to help save you thousands of dollars. I do suspect if you're a buyer, now is a great time to buy used vehicles. Used vehicle, gas or electric, they've just dropped by 30%, and they could very well peak up as they traditionally do come spring. So December, January, February, good months to buy a used vehicle. They will go back up most likely when people get their checks from get money back from doing their taxes. So there's also talk how these electric vehicles, at one particular YouTube channel that got almost 400,000 views, might finish at 1 million views. I'm just going to read this comment here. Did you just put up a picture of an ID4 because of the text that I sent you tonight. I haven't read the text because I was dealing with some baby issues, but I do like having different brands up here. There's a picture of different brands. So thank you very much, Ridgeview, for the question. But I'm going to check out your text and see what I can do with it. I do love answering and having, friendship with the very regular followers of the channel, especially my monitor. But my friendship is pretty open. You can contact me over at Johnny's Car Care and Reviews over at Instagram. I'm on there. I check that more often than, let's say, X. I'm ever so slightly on X, and I'm also on Rumble. So this one channel that's probably going to be seen by 1 million people is saying that EVs are a scam from all the brands. Do not buy them because guess what? They're going to be a horrible environmental impact because they foresee that, these 4,000 EVs and more coming down the pipeline, they're just not going to sell. They paint this picture of this almost post-apocalyptic scenario where you'll have tens, if not hundreds of thousands of EVs that the government's forced big manufacturers to make just sitting around. And then, of course, those rare minerals, the cobalt and the lithium, they're just going to pollute. That's going to be true once these vehicles have been used for 20 years. But these vehicles are going to sell. Believe you me, the market will adjust itself. Just like I believe the Fed will adjust and lower interest rates to get us out of this recession that they have yet to admit we're in, but we are in a recession. Viewers send me comments. I see what goes on. I go through the Costco, there's maybe 30 parking lots left Friday night. And guess what? And this is right before Christmas. A lot of those shopping carts weren't filled to the brim. A lot of them were sadly just getting the bare necessities. I heard the conversations being had by people of saying, oh, well, we can't just eat pasta. And then the other partner answering, well, that's what we can afford. So our daughter's just going to have to eat pasta. And this is the time of year where most people are like, if there's any available income, it's like, yeah, it's the time of year. Let's spoil ourselves. Let's buy beer, wine, turkey, ham, steaks. Let's go all out. We'll have ribs. We'll, the days we're off, we're going to really enjoy life. Outsider Reviews, thank you. I need someone in the chat supporting me here. So yes, EVs, even if your electricity comes from coal, EVs eventually will have an advantage. It takes about, I was from the channel Engineering Something or Another. He calculated out, it was about 17 years. And these batteries are assumed to lose about 2% efficacy every year. So 10 years down the road, 20%. 20 years down the road, they'll have used roughly 40% of their efficacy, and that's probably about the time we're going to start thinking about, getting rid of it. But then they need to put these batteries into things like forklifts and whatnot. Now, so channels, media, they're saying they're going to be horrible for the environment, and that unsold EVs, there's going to be tens of thousands of unsold EVs, and they're going to get abandoned. So that doesn't mean that EVs are going to crash. We've talked about this, so I won't explain it more. But they also mentioned not just this channel that probably 1 million or 2 million people are going to see, but I've heard this from the big legacy media as well, that over 3,000 dealers sent a letter to Biden and that they're demonstrating. They're expressing their concern against the Biden administration's push for EVs, saying that this isn't going to work, that people don't want these vehicles. Well, here's the real deal. I can tell you why EV dealers are upset with EVs. Price, lithium prices skyrocketed in the last 3 years. So now the price that EVs are being sold at, the problem is the more expensive ones are sitting on lots. The Platinum Lightning, for example. An extended range Lariat, somewhat but very much the Platinum Lightning is sitting around on lots, and dealers are paying 7% interest on that, and these vehicles are essentially being forced on them. They're also upset, for example, maybe you've heard of the lawsuit of some Ford dealers taking Ford to court because they don't like this idea that they have to put in whether it's in US dollars, about $1.4 million infrastructure to their dealership in order to have the right to sell these electric vehicles. They don't feel that's fair. So that's upsetting them, of course, as well. They're saying, look, you're forcing us to spend our family-owned businesses money on this expensive infrastructure, but then you have much, much, much lower profit margins for these vehicles than traditional gas-powered vehicles. And, they're sitting around and we're paying interest on them, but we're making more money at the end of the day. Even if we sold them on day one, we'd make less money. Just the potential profit range or the revenue built into the dealership's portion when they resell that vehicle, it's very, very slim. So yeah, no, dealers are not happy. They don't like how this is going down. They probably don't like how they have to compete against Tesla that has no dealers, meaning not as good service when it comes to asking questions, getting your vehicle serviced, having, just a information base and a base where you can be assisted by people. Not having dealers, I don't think is the right option. Having dealers that have more rules and regulations in regards to sales, I think is a fantastic idea. And on that, I'll say Prost. Because I think more protections need to be put in place for the buyers of vehicles. Now, some Ford dealers are seeing Ford, are suing Ford for that EV push, but there's a lot more going on with that than just EVs being dead and, the beginning of a massive crash that will lead to the death. It's a lot about cost, about price, about cheddar. Now, there's also a claim being made from one particular YouTube channel that insurances will cost $6,000 per year for an EV. Now, later on, they go on to say as much as, Marie's not here, but as you may know, she's well placed in the insurance world, and many people know, obviously she knows, but even I know that someone's insurance can be extremely expensive no matter what they get, because, well, if they've been convicted of a crime, if they have bad credit, if they've gone a period of time without having insurance coverage on a vehicle, all these things can really increase premiums. If the vehicle's stolen a lot, if the vehicle costs a lot to repair, it'll cost more. And yes, EVs do cost a lot more to repair potentially, because there's stringent rules that if there's any casing damage on that battery, well, often the batteries there's a lot of work that needs to go into ensuring that there's no leak on that battery, because when water gets into these lithium batteries, guess what? They catch fire and they're very hard to put out, and they can cause a lot of damage. They can burn all the vehicles around them. It can be a major issue. So electric vehicles aren't going anywhere because of this guy right here. And unless he's going somewhere, currently, if the Democratic Party continues to run the United States, if the Liberal Party continues to run in Canada, electric vehicles aren't going anywhere because they're being forced on manufacturers. For the sheer survival of manufacturers, they have to go EV because they have carbon taxes. Essentially, manufacturers will get fined if they don't make EVs. Now, they could come out with some other technology that gets you 50 miles per gallon on a pickup truck, and if that other technology isn't EV, well then yes, EVs could disappear because manufacturers find a solution that help you get whether it's a Corvette, a Mustang, a huge pickup. The mass-produced high-volume vehicles are the biggest problem, because basically what's going on is manufacturers have to have a high mile per gallon. Slowly but surely, it's coming to 50 miles per gallon. Manufacturers need to get to 50 miles per gallon overall on average across all their vehicle sales. Otherwise, they will spend billions of dollars in fines or pay billions of dollars in carbon credits to, let's say, Tesla helping Tesla make more money, reduce their prices, and really you're paying your competitor to make it harder for you to compete because you can't catch up if your competitor is always getting less and less expensive or better and better. But in this case, Tesla is getting less and less expensive, harder for Dodge, Ford, and all the other companies to keep up. But if they don't keep up, they will pay billions of dollars to either Tesla or even more to the government. So that's the issue right there. These vehicles are getting forced on manufacturers. If they don't build them, they will not survive. And that's why you're seeing vehicles like the Dodge Charger and Dodge Challenger go out of existence. They're going EV. And the last Dodge Challenger rolled off the lot rolled out of the factory December 22nd. That's a sad day because we're being presented with less and less choice, and we're having our freedoms removed as time progresses, all in the name of safety. And, like a parent, no, you can't do that because it's for your safety. We're adults, and our governments are treating us like children and figuring that we can't make decisions for ourselves. We'll, choose to buy things that'll destroy the planet, will lead ourselves into extinction if they don't watch over us and create more and more stringent rules and really they're creating laws to give themselves the right to spy on us. That's not normal. And this is Rant Talk, and it's going to go to the end of the live. So that ends this episode. So episode 1 is over. Now let's take a little break to switch up this topic. Lots of photos I didn't cover, but yes, they are getting cheaper, these electric vehicles, and they could continue to get cheaper. Don't forget that. They could definitely continue to get cheaper as the cost of materials go down. Manufacturers absolutely need to bring the price. They need to sell these no matter what. They need to sell these to avoid billions of dollars in fines or being forced to give billions of dollars to their competitors, which is also another way to, this year I'm going to shoot my right foot so I can keep on walking. And then next year I'm going to shoot my left foot so that I can keep on walking. And then I'm going to be, rolling around. And then to survive, I'm going to have to cut my arm off. This is the type of scenario that manufacturers are in. Ford, Dodge, GM, Volvo, Audi, they don't want to take away your Porsche. They don't want to take away your your gas-powered, petrol-powered engine. They love selling these vehicles. It's their bread and butter. It's what they know. It's what they're good at. They don't want to, willy-nilly go into the whole electric world and compete with Tesla, but they are forced to. There's no choice. The WB, you're going to like me tonight because I'm talking Corvettes, and you've got Marie's support, and I would love a prime cut steak. I had some ribs tonight, but I do miss my steaks. But over the Christmas holidays, I'm definitely having some Costco steaks. Now, I was testing out at a friend's house. My best friend made some, 40 or 60-day-old steak, aged steak, and we compared it to the Costco. And I'm not a snob. I'm going to say I really like the Costco steak, and I'm not, there's no promotion going on here. So, yeah, these vehicles it's all about survival, so they're going to continue to produce them, and they're going to find ways, and it's wild, because you'll get all the legacy media saying EVs are done, or the manufacturers are going to be done because they're losing billions of dollars on these. Heck, Ford this year is going to lose $3 to $5 billion for 2023 on their EV projects. But they're doing so because, let's say they lose $3 to $5 billion on these electric vehicles. Same thing for GM. Well, if Ford makes $11 billion and if GM makes, anywhere from $9 to $15 billion, what's a loss in one department when you're making a lot in the other department, and you need to take a loss in department EV in order to be able to make that money, because you don't want to end up making $11 billion on the petrol side, have done nothing in regards to electric vehicles, hybrid vehicles, have a really high mile per gallon average across your fleet, and then the government goes, well, it's going to cost you $11 billion in fines, or you can give $5 billion to Tesla. You don't want to give $5 billion to your competitor, especially when you know other people are in line to give $5 billion to Tesla. Lots of talk about my shirt right now. I'm happy I'm not the only one here that likes the standard 1950s styling. I've got the old style glasses, and I've got the old style shirt, and I'm an old style guy. I think it's my job to take care of my wife, and that I have duties to and responsibilities to her, and she has duties and responsibilities to me, and that we both have our own set of skill sets that were made to complement each other, and that we're made to live together, have children, and eat steak, not bug powder. Again, going towards that rant, but this is a rantable topic. Being forced EVs is a very rantable topic, and I think it's something we all need to be vocal about, because the whole idea that CO2 is going to lead to human extinction is absolutely, quite potentially, I'll correct myself, quite potentially a farce. CO2 in the atmosphere, folks, is at 0.03 parts. At 0.02 parts, vegetation, if below 0.02 parts CO2 in the atmosphere, vegetation dies off, meaning we'll have a heck of a time trying to survive, and it will be catastrophic for the planet. We've been at 0.07 parts CO2 in the atmosphere before, and there were animals, mammals, reptiles, and maybe even humans, depending whose side of history you're on, or at least primates, on the planet. So we've been at 0.07 before parts CO2. And this is being used to remove freedoms. And every decade since the 1950s, some sort of psychology op has been going on, a psyop has been going on the population, saying it would lead to the end of the world, whether it was glaciers melting, oil running out, and I forgot the other list of BS that we were told. We got through it. So, folks, buy an EV if you like an EV. Don't buy an EV if you don't like EVs. But if you don't like EVs, or if you love EVs, either way, can you please vocally express that you want the right to choose? That if you like EVs, great for you. And if someone else doesn't like EVs, you know what? You can still like and appreciate that person. We're not in different warring camps. Let's not separate people into all these different little groups fighting against each other, being too distracted because they're arguing with trolls on the internet. Let's all try to come together and just realize that we can agree on a few things. That kindness is good and should be shared. That we're all just people doing what we can to be happy and take care of ourselves and our families. And that we should all be willing to fight, verbally fight, not physically fight, but verbally fight for all our rights to choice, freedom of movement, freedom of choice, freedom to have families, freedom to buy homes and take care of ourselves, and freedom to work, and freedom to actually progress in life, and not work underneath a communist system or a system that labels any type of descending contrary to the main theme that's being spread by media as hate. If you think of Ireland, it's kind of ridiculous that the people protesting in Ireland are being classified as a bunch of racists that all need to be arrested. No, of course, the ones that are, if anyone lights anything on fire or does private damage to private property, yes, they should be punished. There's already laws for that. But Ireland is already using what's going on with these riots, or the riots that went down in Ireland because of 3 children being stabbed. Well, the people that are rioting, it's because they want to be able to vocalize who and how many immigrants come into the country, because they want to sort of keep their culture. And those that have that opinion are being labeled as hateful and spreaders of hate. And even they want to arrest people if you express that type of notion on the internet. You can, in Europe, not just in Ireland, but in other places in Europe, you can be arrested for expressing political views on the internet because they'll be labeled as hate speech. So in Canada, we need to also be very careful when our government wants to criminalize hate speech, because it's not going to be used very much for protecting people against bullying. It's going to be used to imprison people with opposing views, and that's not what our forefathers fought for when they fought for liberty and freedom in all the previous wars. So let's move on. That's the end of this show. Thank you for making it through. I know it was a little bit of a wild one, a little all over the place, but I'm Johnny from Johnny's Car Care and Reviews, and would love it if you support this small family business by giving a good old thumbs up, share this content, and of course, turn your bell notifications on so you don't miss out. Outsider Reviews, WB, Richard Macbeth. Thank you so much for sticking with us. We're now on to episode 2. Now, I didn't get into this because I would have ended up ranting, so we'll put this as a mini rant in between episodes. But there's a huge issue, though, when it comes to EVs, and that's that a lot of the batteries come from China. And China kind of wants to poke the United States hard enough so that they get into a war, whether it's a war because of what they're going to do in Taiwan, or whether it's with their relationship with Palestine and Iran. China's working hard to get the United States into a war. They want the United States to be in a war with Russia, themselves, Iran. And I don't know if any of you have seen the younger generation, but I think we've got amazing forces in Canada, amazing, United States forces, the soldiers, the airmen, the seamen. I think they're amazing right now. But you don't want anything to happen to them, because I think I've showed it on the show before, but it's kind of comical and kind of sums it up. You've got, the younger generations talking about how there's no way they're going to get conscripted, and it's scary. It's scary. Let's hear this.
Is everybody saying Gen Z is going to get drafted? Like, no, we're not. And you know why I know that? Because we're just going to say no. I understand it was like that in like the 1940s. What else is there to do in 1940 besides shoot people? We have things to do nowadays. We have twerk, be bisexual, eat hot chip, lie. And we're also like really mentally ill. I have like 6 of these. What makes you think I'm qualified to have a gun? And finally, like, guns are like so tacky. Like, can you imagine just like pulling up with a gun? Like, that is so f***ing embarrassing. Like, what is this? The Revolutionary f***ing War? No. Like, let's just chat.
I don't know whether that's parody or whether that's real. Either way.
Ben Shapiro's great. He shares some great viewpoints, but yeah, conscription for the younger generation does worry me. I don't want to have to go to war, so let's not force ourselves into a dependence on electric vehicles, because guess what? China's making those batteries, and if we're forcing everything to go electric, so you've got electric tanks and all, even if we forget the war machines, if our means of transport within our own borders gets essentially shut off because it's very hackable, it can be shut off at a distance, and if batteries coming in, battery production gets completely shut off, let's not put ourselves in a situation where we don't have transport. Let's not be reliant on China. That's not a relationship at the moment that's currently going all that well. Not well at all. Not well at all. Now, I think that is going to cover it for this rant. We'll cut it out, of course, for the main episode. Side note, I'm not sure if any of you have seen this, but it is interesting how Elon Musk is saying that George Soros is destroying humanity. I think being forced one type of vehicle is not a good idea. Maybe it's not destroying humanity, but it's certainly playing into an agenda where our vehicles could be easily cut off, our freedom of movement could be easily controlled. Now, M. Peugeot, I'd love to hear more about your 2.3 liter manual Bronco, because I'm actually starting to consider that as a replacement for the Lightning. Very much considering that as a replacement, because the Lightning gets on my nerves at times, and I'll explain why later on in the episode. So, nice little clip of our ancestors versus today. More reason why maybe no one should go to war these days. You've got, one of these boy bands crying. He twisted his poor little ankle. And also I feel bad under the current situation. You've got governments letting everyone in, and that's wild. I'd love to, potentially live in the States, but I'd follow all the legal procedures, and it'd be difficult and long. Whereas, we've got some of this in Canada, and we've got an amazing police force, we have amazing soldiers, but they've got to put up with this crap. Very sorry for that. So we'll start that over. So pardon me for that language, but essentially you've got an individual and company essentially dressed up as jihadists, threatening a police officer, threatening him to put him 6 feet under, should be arrested. But obviously the higher powers that be, how police officers, and of course the military, how essentially soldiers, civilian soldiers, police officers, and soldiers out on the battlefield, their conduct is based on politicians down. So of course they get their immediate orders from their superior, but those original orders come from, let's say, a politician wanting a general direction for the country. And I think it's wild how if you, on the internet, if you say that, in Europe, if you simply say, well, to protect the type of environment we have in the country now, we should control how many new people come to our country. And we should also be a little choosy. Let's try to get some doctors, and let's try to get some mechanics and, people who will help build and maintain society, not just, floods of 14 to fighting age males coming into the country. And let's have completely open borders that now saying that we should select who comes and close off borders. It's that's somehow hateful, and that's somehow racist. I think we're living in a wild time, and that's why we might very well get to the end of this show with a little episode called The End of Democracy or a Civil War. Beware. Let's get through the good stuff first. Let's get that violence off the television. That actually is a television set before me. I know this isn't a TV show, but it's a television set. Now let's talk about whether we're headed to a recession. And well, auto sales do explain a lot. So we're going to get some data from auto sales right here. All right. Thank you for giving me a little moment to get the slide up. We'll start episode 2, and that's right here. Are we headed for a recession? Auto sales explain a lot. Now, this type of information can go one of two ways. You can say that we're having an amazing year, or you can also start to see that we are headed absolutely for a recession. And if you believe that, well, you can probably, if you think we're headed for a recession, Either the Fed will not lower interest rates, in which case the way life as we know it is done, or they want to save the current system and they will lower interest rates, in which case, and I hope that's the case, this is why I've invested in the company TMF. I am not a financial advisor, so please don't take this as financial advice in any way whatsoever. This is my gamble. And I'm Johnny from Johnny's Car Care and Reviews. Please hit that like button, the thumbs up, subscribe, share this information with people that need to hear it, that like to hear a lot about the automobile industry and automobiles and cars and trucks, and a little bit of extra thrown in, whether it's financial talk, political talk, social talk. We're here to talk and enjoy the evening as friends, as a caring car community that takes care of each other, that brings forth, we're all part of this show. Everyone in the live, you're in the live chat, you bring information forward, you talk about it in the live. That's all part of the show, and that's fantastic. I try to catch as much of that as possible, and the good stuff that you think I might learn something from, I probably will learn something from. So throw it in the comments section. Please drop comments to these show. I sometimes make episodes based on people's comments. In one way or another, I always learn from them. So let's go to Cox Automotive for the real deal. These guys deal with data. They're not headline chasers, kind of like bad lawyers who are ambulance chasers. Most of media nowadays, they're all about headline chasers. They want those clicks, and they're willing to say, like a dirty lawyer, they don't care whether their client's guilty or not. They don't care about the truth. They care about money. So they just present whatever is going to catch your clicks. They're clickbaiters. So they're clickbaiters and they're masters at it. Let's talk about the real deal right here. There were decent, very, very decent sales in November, and 2023 is going to go down as a pretty good sales year if you compare it to last year or the year before. But guess what? 2022 and 2021 had low inventory, a fact that most media either exploits and doesn't pay attention to the rest, or often just goes, hey, we're having a better month this year than we did last year over year. We are winning, people. The economy's great. Groceries don't cost a fortune. Please comment if you're finding the price of groceries disgusting. I know I am. I've seen them double. I haven't done groceries in like 2 years. I did them during the whole COVID lockdowns because I didn't want Marie getting sick, and I did groceries for my brother, and I did groceries for my parents. So I was the grocery getter, and it's wild. From 2021 to now, they've essentially doubled. It's wild. We are headed for a recession, folks. It's not all bad news. It doesn't mean it's the end of the world here. But, let's talk about the facts, and the automobile industry proves to us that we're heading for a recession. So Cox Automotive forecasts annual vehicle sales pace in November to finish near 15.3 million. At one point, they predicted we were going to hit 15.5 million, but it looks now that it's going to be 15.3 million because we're having a bit of a downturn at the end of the year. We're up 1 million from last November, which was 14.3 million back in 2022, but down slightly from October's 15.5 million level. So in October, we thought for the whole year we'd do 15.5 million units in the US. That's vehicles, cars, trucks, SUVs, hybrids, electric vehicles, even those not so good looking family vans that I'm allergic to. They thought they'd sell, the economy would be able to unload, manufacturers would unload onto the economy 15.5 million vehicles. And it's going to be 15.3, or very close. So November's sales volume is expected to rise by 6.5% from 1 year ago. So you'll have headlines saying, this is great news, economy's hot, everyone's doing great. Let me know how you're doing. I get comments from, I got one comment, gosh, one comment almost hurt my feelings this week. Someone thought that I must be paid by the Obama-Biden administration and that I must be rolling in all their money, all that laundered money from, sending money all over the place, printing off trillions of dollars, sending it, and then coincidentally that those countries then spend money on weapons from corporations that then spend billions of dollars per year feeding money back into what's called lobbying money. which you could almost see this circle as kind of like a money laundering scheme. You take taxpayers' dollars, you give it to other countries, those countries buy weapons from US corporations, that then those US corporations pump that money right back into the politicians. Sorry, it's not directly into the politicians' pockets. Legally, it has to go into another company, and then a lobbying company, and then the lobbying company sends the money to the politicians, which I think that should absolutely be illegal. We got to get rid of money from lobbying. Donations, there should only be individual donations. Corporations should not be able to donate money. Political parties should only be allowed to get money from humans, individuals, real people, with a limit, so that, billionaires don't have more control over politicians than, let's say, 100 million people. One multi-billionaire having more power and influence over a politician than 100 million people doesn't make sense, because those 100 million people, they need representation as well. For high, for low, thank you so much for making it into the show. So November, looks like sales are up. So are we on smooth sailing? Is everything A-okay, hunky-dory and doing great? Well, yes and no. Sales are up, but inventories were very low. A lot of sales coming into dealers now are from orders. I can tell you personally, so far this month, almost all my sales are from orders made months, if not a year and a half ago. And it was the same case for November. And I can tell you as an insider that we could very well have a big decline some point in 24, when the people who've ordered way back when and have been waiting a long time, when they've all been given their vehicles, if interest rates are still high, if prices are still about where they are now, sales will likely go down. So Cox Automotive here, so Outsider Reviews says sales are up. It's relative to inventory. Yes, there's way more inventory. So Cox Automotive says also that probably all this sales increase is due to the inventory increase. It's also due to orders finally. Really, they've been coming in all year, but they've been coming in really strong, these orders, from months ago, since this summer. But here's the thing, folks. 2023 will mark the best sales year since the pandemic. Cox Automotive here, quoting them, but will be down more than 11% from the average volume sold in the years 2015 to 2019. And remember back in 2015 to 2019, I remember that period, there was talk about us going towards a recession, that we were due for a recession, that there would be a slowdown. And instead of a recession, what did we get? We got a pandemic. We got a pandemic. Nothing was planned in that. It was all dealt with very responsibly and intelligently, and we didn't lose unnecessarily any freedoms whatsoever, and we weren't forced any things either. It was a wonderful time, and we're all taken care of. But we're back 11% lower than the time period from 2015 to 2019, when it was deemed that we were moving towards a recession. So, inventories are building up. Cox Automotive is seeing this. I'm seeing this. And the total year-end volumes will be based largely on just how aggressive automakers and dealers are willing to be when it comes to discounts and incentives. Well, I think that's what's going to happen. There's a lot of buildup of inventory, and I think 2024 is a make or break year. If the Fed, if they drop interest rates, and automakers, I think when they read into the numbers, are going to see that sales on paper look good, but they're actually okay. They're okay. They're not amazing. All the headlines you'll see we've seen them throughout the entire year. Every month we've seen headlines with the sales are better than the year before. Now, actually, from a lot of YouTube for the last 4 or 5 months, we've been seeing the other extreme. They're saying it's the end. There's a huge, massive crash, and this is like the end of car sales, basically. They're really over-exaggerating the fact. I think it could be if no one did anything, but I highly suspect the Fed's going to drop interest rates. They finally started talking about doing, at least keeping them stable. And actually, they're talking about dropping interest rates about 3 times in 2023. So I think what we're going to see is, in 2024, I think what we're probably going to see is 5 to 8 interest rate drops in 2024. And that's going to be based on how bad, the recession we're currently in that no one's willing to admit. How bad are we in a recession? So I think we're actually decently bad off when you see food double, when you see the prices of houses double in the last 10 years, and most of that doubling got done in the last 3 years. I know my house almost went up in my area, almost doubled since I bought it in 2019. No, I'm sorry, it's more than doubled. I got a good price on it. If I hadn't gotten a good price on it, it would have only doubled since 2019. So I'm talking about this not because, I'm in a situation, when I talk about how we need to be vocal and stick together and not fall into that trap of hating one another and getting into these groups and seeing the other groups as the enemy. I think we can all agree that we want freedom, we want safety and health, roofs over our heads for our families, food on the tables for our families, and good food. Not this World Economic Forum idea of get rid of all the farms. And if you're watching the news over in Europe, you've got farmers in several countries over the last 2 years, they've been protesting because they've seen how the laws are trying to wipe them out of existence. The World Economic Forum has talked about how farms essentially need to go out of existence. They want us on the bug powder. So, not a fan. I think we can all get behind that. Sorry for that. You don't buy an EV. We'll talk about more of that at the end of the show. But basically, sales are 11% less than back in 2015 and 2019 when there was talk of a recession coming down. I know someone who manages wealth, and essentially they, back in those years, I think it was 2017, essentially sold all the stocks for the wealth that this person was managing and bought real estate as a safe asset. Fantastic choice when you look back at it, but bought all sorts of commercial real estate, sold all the stocks because this individual saw the recession coming. There was talk of it. It never happened. We got the pandemic instead. So that is where we're headed. I think we're headed towards a recession. I think that this isn't the end. I have faith that, there isn't going to be a recession that turns into essentially a depression with chaos and violence or lack of democracy or civil war. I don't think that's the case, despite the movies that are coming out, despite mainstream media essentially saying that if Trump gets elected, it's going to be a dictatorship, so that in that case, they need to remove him from ballots, which is anti-democratic. We'll talk about that at the end of the episode. I think that's wild, saying to protect democracy, we have to break the principles and the main framework of democracy. We have to break it to protect democracy. That's wild. That's like saying we have to remove all your freedoms to make sure you stay free. That's wild. I think we are in a turbulent time, but I think enough of us are capable of logic, reflection, compassion, and love for one another that we can say, no, you know what, verbally and peacefully, we will just say, this doesn't pass. This doesn't work. So that's the end of that episode. So right here, sorry, I just have to take notes. Marie's not here to help us out. She's breastfeeding. We've got a baby that will, during the day, sleep for 20 minutes and then demand to drink for an hour, sleep for 20 minutes, and then demand to sleep or be held by us for, it's about an hour of feeding, sleep for 20 minutes. And in that hour, we either have to be holding her or feeding her. So Marie is one busy mom. And when I'm home and not working, I'm one busy papa, but I'm a proud papa. I love my daughter. I take my responsibility to protect and raise her right very seriously. So that's the end of that episode. We're going to be moving right along. So let's quickly have a little mini episode. Let's get the slide going, folks. Get back to our little slides here. Get some nice Ford slides here if we can. All right. Episode 3, we're at 1 hour and 14 minutes. Episode 3, Ford cuts production in half. Now, does this spell trouble? Is this the end of EVs at Ford? Well, yes. We're going to get to the bottom of this. I'm going to make sure that no one gets fooled, and I'm going to make sure that I save you thousands. I'm Johnny from Johnny's Car Care and Reviews. Please hit that thumbs up button. Share this information. Subscribe, and please turn bell notifications on. If you're watching the live, thank you for putting up with that intro. We just got out of a rant because those rants are saved for the live episodes. Now, folks, Ford has cut EV production in half. And you know what? I have some love and hate relationship with my Lightning. But media is going to try to tell you that Ford has cut EV production in half, like you're going to hear from many other automakers, because EVs are doomed, that they're going out, that this is going to be a dead technology. They're going to basically talk like you won't be seeing this in 5 years, but they won't say that because they know that's not true and that they will be proven completely and horribly wrong. What does it really mean? What's really going on? Ford has cut not current production in half, because right now they're making about 4,000 of these EVs per month. They haven't cut the production in half of these. They're not going to go from 4,000 to 2,000 a month, which would make you seem like, wow, people really hate the F-150 Lightning, the Ford Lightning. And that's how big media and a lot of sketchy YouTube channels are going to present this information. They'll just have the title, Ford cuts production in half, and try to not really explain the real deal. So here's the real deal, folks. Don't be fooled. What's going on here? What's really going on is that Ford is cutting a planned production. And their planned production was pretty wild. You know, I myself, when I first kind of half calculated, reading through things, being an insider, figured it kind of sounds like Ford's going to make, I think originally it was like 35,000 Lightnings for like the first period. So basically from summer until the first 6 months. And I was like, okay, so year 2, they're going to make 60, 70,000 Lightnings. But before that happened, Ford announced, you know what? We're going to double our planned production. So then I was like, okay, are they now at 60,000 rough, or are they at 120,000 rough? Because it's hard to say, because originally it looked like they're going to make about 30,000 for the first 6 months. But where are we gonna go? How is this going to end? Ford's not giving us precise and exact numbers, except for when they'd say, oh, by 2026, we want to make 600,000 EVs. And actually, I think 2026, it was 2 million. It was earlier on, like 2024 was going to be 600,000 EVs. So of all those EVs, how many were going to be Lightnings? Was it going to be 300,000 or 400,000? I can say probably we're looking at 300,000 to 400,000 EVs as planned production. Ford has cut the planned production in half. So guess what? Production is going up. I know that's not a very exciting story, but right now, if Ford's making 4,000 Lightnings per month, that's about 40,000. They're wanting to get to the point where they make roughly about 20, 25, max 30,000 from my guesstimates here, my educated guesstimates per month. Okay, so production's going to go up. Not a sexy story. People want gloom and loom. That's why you've got major media talking about, how we're possibly headed for a civil war. All these big headlines, all the exaggeration. This isn't that big of a story. Ford is adapting, and Ford wants to adapt intelligently, because remember, Ford loses, $32,000 on average per electric vehicle. And that doesn't mean that they lose $32,000 on the Platinum Lightning. No, it means on average across the Mach-E and the Lightning. They'll lose $3 to $5 billion on electric vehicles this year alone, but they're probably going to make $9 to $11 billion on the gas-powered vehicles, the petrol-powered vehicles for 2023. So what do we've got going on here? We've got a scenario where Ford is forecasting that they'll lose a heck of a lot of money if they try to make, 300,000-400,000 of these vehicles. Because originally in that let's make 300,000-400,000 planned vehicles, Lightnings, there's going to be a lot of Platinums, there's going to be a lot of Lariats, and here's the truth. I'm an insider here. Platinums are not selling. Lariats are selling somewhat. The logical choices that Ford loses the most money on, the Pro and the XLT standard range battery, there is an insane amount of demand on it, and there should be. The main reason I don't like my Lightning is because I overspent. I got the Lariat extended range battery because I switch every 6 months, and I kind of had some other insiders and myself, we talked ourselves into thinking that the Lariat extended range battery would be the popular model because it's comfortable, it's amazingly comfortable, and we thought that people would really jump on that extended range battery. But what actually happened is people who are fearful of the range are fearful of the range for both the regular standard range battery and the extended range battery. So those people who are fearful, and some of it's very fair. The infrastructure is not great everywhere. It's fantastic where I live. Fantastic. It's pretty darn good where I live. I'd like to see all the 50 kilowatt chargers replaced by 150 kilowatt chargers. But beggars can't be choosers here. My main problem is just my payment with this vehicle. That's the main problem, and the Blue Cruise. But we can work through that. If you have a problem with your vehicle, go to the dealer, talk to them about the problem, be persistent, and your problem will get fixed. But that's my main problem here with the Lightning. I've got a lot of love going on with this, and I'm going to be having a little episode on that. But planned production has been cut in half, and they have to. They need to sell enough electric vehicles to offset paying billions of dollars in either fines to the governments or carbon credits by being forced to essentially buy at a deal carbon credits from, let's say, Tesla, their competitor. But that's not the best plan. And they don't want to lose more money than they have to. And they lose the most money on the Pro model and the XLT standard. So you are going to see a lot of these sitting around on lots because dealers ordered a lot. Ford sent a lot of Lariats and Platinums. These are the models that cost dealers. This is what's upsetting dealers. Because they're paying 7-8% interest rate, thousands of dollars on these very expensive trucks. But if Ford were to send essentially all Pro and XLT standard range Lightnings to dealers, they could probably get away with selling 300,000 of these per year because you know what? They make amazing sense. It's an amazing choice. Why is it an amazing choice? Because a Pro is so much less than your petrol-powered F-150. There's a huge savings in monthly cost, and then there's also a savings when it comes to gas. I do pay a little more interest on this vehicle. I pay about $2,000 per year on this vehicle, and if I had a petrol-powered vehicle, I would pay about $1,100 or $1,200 per year. So there is an extra cost to insuring an electric vehicle because if you get, let's say, a side impact and it has some damage, just a little damage on that battery's coming out. No insurance company is gonna hit pass and let a vehicle with some battery damage back on the road, because if any water gets into this battery, all electric vehicles that are lithium ion, water gets in, that is a non-stop fire. The fire could burn for days because you could put it out, and if the fire people, let's be honest, they're almost all men, but if the firemen leave, it could very well catch on fire again. That's an issue. So the insurance claims the cost of repairs on these vehicles is significantly more than on your petrol-powered vehicle. So does this spell trouble for Ford? Well, let me know what you think. Share your thoughts. Do you like EVs? Do you like the idea of an EV truck? Now, I know a lot of YouTube is really poo-pooing on these vehicles because they're saying they're way overpriced, and that's just absolutely true and absolutely silly. People need to think things through, be critical thinkers, and really flush out and expunge an idea. The Platinum and the Lariat extended range battery are much more than their petrol-powered counterparts, but the Pro is much less. The XLT standard range battery, let's say in Canada, you can get an XLT standard range battery for $73,000, and after taxes, it gets a $5,000 subvention, a rebate from the government. The Pro gets $12,000 from our government, but even without those rebates, $73,000 for an XLT standard range battery, and guess what? Its gas-powered equivalent with less equipment is an XLT Sport 302 or the high package, and it's $75,000. And you're going to save a whole lot of fuel and cost if you plug and charge at home in most regions. A full charge, 500 kilometers in the summer or 300 kilometers in the winter, costs me $8 of electricity at my house. And it's very expensive and annoying if I charge while I'm on a trip, if I don't get that 150 kilowatt charger, because the 50 kilowatt chargers are slow. I've spent an hour charging at one. And it's so annoying. In Canada, you can't just pay with your credit card. You have to have this silly app. You have to know how the app works. You have to be embarrassed in front of, your father because you're having trouble with an app when you're supposed to be, the one young one in the family. I'm the youngest of three brothers. I had trouble with the app. I wanted to rip the cable right out of the machine. But then I saw that there is a helpline called the helpline. Super helpful. They really helped me out. It went well. But then on a 50 kilowatt, after an hour from going for, basically we wouldn't have eaten, but we went to a restaurant. So we're like, no big deal. We'll come back and we'll have the power. But then we had to stop again on our trip. So there are some inconveniences. But other than when I'm doing a cold weather, 2.5, 3 hour trip one way, so a total of roughly 6 hours of driving plus a detour. So 6.5, almost 7 hours of driving. Other than that, it's amazing to go to work. It's a great daily, but it's good to have a petrol-powered vehicle. So that's the end of that episode. We got through it. Nice, quick one. Now, please like and subscribe. Hit that thumbs up button. Share this information. Help our family business out here, folks. Let's see. The next topic we're going to be talking about are going to be cars and trucks that are the best to buy because they depreciate the least. Now let's get this going. I've got to go over to, let's see here, IC cars. So I'm going to write off this episode here because we'll be turning this into mini episodes, but the mini episodes get the rants cut out. We don't get to hang out as a community. I see the outsider reviews, the WB, you're still here. If you have a question, please write at Johnny's Car Care and Reviews, and maybe just write at Johnny's Car Care and Reviews 2 or 3 times so you keep popping up and then ask your question, because unfortunately with these lives, the live chat doesn't stay on for very long on the side here because the laptop's actually running this. I actually need to have a second laptop. That's what I need to do. So I need to go out and buy myself a second laptop. But really appreciate that you're still here in the chat. Now let's talk about episode 4. Let's talk about cars and trucks that are the best to buy because, well, they depreciate the least. Remember, folks, to save thousands of dollars, you need to not just think about the money you're saving up front, because guess what? Some of the vehicles with the biggest rebates have the biggest depreciation. If someone offers you an incredible rebate on a Jaguar, and you're like, I'm getting $10,000 off a new Jag, but you're going to be trading it in 2-3 years. Oh boy, you think you're getting a good deal at the beginning, but you're going to be realizing you got a really bad deal. You did not buy the right vehicle to be reselling 2 to 3 years later, because when it comes down to it, cost is about purchase price, maintenance, repairs, and selling price. So that's advice to save you thousands of dollars. And we're going to be talking about the top 25 cars that hold their value the best. And then we'll talk about the 25 cars to absolutely avoid in another quick episode. So this is from IC Cars, if you want to follow along or read the article later on. But here's the big takeaway. EVs that used to hold their value the best are now depreciating the most. So overall, EVs are, if you're thinking about quick resale, EVs are vehicles to avoid. Think Porsche. Usually, most Porsches really hold their value really well. Not the EV Porsche; that's the worst on for them. So, vehicle segments that hold their value well, hybrids are the best for holding their value over, some of the best for holding their value overall. But trucks, if you're willing to spend extra money on fuel, trucks hold their value really well. When I bought my Lightning, EVs were holding their value really well. If you think back in 2019, EVs held their value the best out of the category. They were holding their value at 67.1%, and now they're down to 49.1%. So EVs right now are not holding their value very well. Hybrids are pretty good. Trucks are very, very good. They're the top. People love their trucks here. Now, if you're in Europe and you're watching this, maybe that's not the case. But these are your vehicles that hold their value the best. Porsche 911 Coupe. Average 5-year depreciation, 9.3%. The WB, that's right, on an electric or hybrid vehicle, don't touch the orange wire. That's trouble if you're a mechanic. Don't play around these vehicles unless you're trained. Porsche 718 Cayman, great. You know, over 5 years, a vehicle losing 17.6% is fantastic. So average dollar difference from SRP for the Cayman, $13,300. The Porsche 911 will have depreciated $18,000 over 5 years, but that's only a 9.3% depreciation because these vehicles range from about 120 to $250,000. You've got the Toyota Tacoma. Toyota Tacoma, you are doing really good there. Depreciation, it's the third on the list, is 20.4%. So over 5 years, you're losing $8,359. Of course, that's if you sell it yourself, because if you trade it in, when you trade in a vehicle, if you get shown the vehicle it sells for, they're playing around with numbers somewhere. They're either not giving you a manufacturer rebate or selling new higher than they should be, or they have some sort of dealer administration fees. I'm much more skeptical of someone offering me retail price for my trade-in, because then I know that there's something extremely fishy going on elsewhere. They're lying to me and distracting, they're smoke and mirrors in one area, so they can be robbing me from my pocket in another area. Now, the Jeep Wrangler and Wrangler Unlimited, over 5 years, 20.8% depreciation, or $8,951 over 5 years. I don't have Marie to take care of the calculator, the WB, so maybe you could help me out with that and let the group know, what is 18,000, the Porsche 911, for example, if you lose 18,000 over 5 years, how much is that cost per year? So that's really interesting, because most people finance their vehicles and they look at their monthly, and that's all they want to think about. But if you have, let's say, a Porsche 911, and this is an extreme example, but you have a crazy high monthly of $3,500 per month. But then let's say you're only losing $4,000, roughly $4,000 per year in depreciation. Well, you need to take that into account for when you resell it 5 years later, because you might instead buy a vehicle that's $900 per month, but then it depreciates so much that when you go to sell it 5 years down the road, the true cost was $4,000 per month. Well, wouldn't you have been better off driving a Porsche 911 instead of some vehicle? Generally, vehicles that depreciate a lot is because people don't like them. You probably will like them less than a Porsche 911 or a Corvette, the WB. Now, you've got the Honda Civic at 21.5%, or $5,817 of depreciation over 5 years. Subaru BRZ, the Subaru BRZ at 23.4%, or $8,114 of average depreciation if you sell the vehicle yourself over 5 years. Chevrolet Camaro, which is discontinued, 24.2%, or $10,161. Toyota CHR, 24.4%. or $6,692 over 5 years. The Subaru Crosstrek. I like Subaru, but I'm a little iffy on when it comes to their models with turbos. They scare me quite a bit. 24.5% depreciation or $7,214 over 5 years. The Toyota Corolla, I love the Toyota Corolla hatchback, one of my favorite cars. 24.5% favorite new cars. Really not one of my favorite overall cars. And when I say favorite cars, I mean non-sports cars, just like a small commuter. Small commuter vehicle, Toyota Corolla, top my list. Mazda 3, top my list. But the Toyota Corolla wins compared to the Mazda 3 because of depreciation. 24.5% or $5,800. Ford Mustang, love it. Great daily. Daily, this thing, I've driven Mustangs in 3 or 4 winters, 3.5 winters, never had an issue, drove through snowstorms, always had decent to great tires, but even one winter I had some Saloon tires. They were half worn at least, and I still got through the snowstorms. 24.5% depreciation or $10,000 over 5 years. Porsche 718 Boxster. They call it the poor man's Porsche, but I think with it being mid-engine, it makes more sense than the rear engine 911, but it depreciates more at 25.1% for 5 years or $20,216. So your real cost is the $20,216 plus what you paid monthly and put in for maintenance and repairs. Your Toyota Tundra, 25.3%. I'm surprised the F-150 isn't above it. But 25.3% or $12,588 for 5 years. So after 5 years, when you resell it, if you sell it yourself, you'll have lost roughly $12,588. Not bad at all, folks. That's a smart vehicle to have. But I do like my Ford F-150s. Kia Rio, 5-door. Nope, not going to touch a Kia Rio, but 25.8% depreciation or $5,000. Porsche 911 convertible. Oh boy, this is what I ordered. I've got a $5,000 deposit on a Porsche 911, and I'm so disappointed to see that it's down on the list compared to the coupe. 26% depreciation, still amazing. That's great. That's fantastic. But it'll be $42,000. $227. So if I buy the Porsche 911 convertible, I've got the deposit on it, $5,000. I've been promised to get that back if I change my mind and let's say get a Corvette, which I almost did this week. But I'll lose apparently $42,227. Honda HR-V, 26.2% or $7,300. Subaru Impreza wagon, 26.2% or $6,900. Kia Rio, not touching that. 26.3% or $4,900. If you like the Kia Rio, tell me I'm wrong and why. Why is that a good vehicle? Why do you like your Kia Rio? Chevrolet Spark. Wouldn't touch that either. Too small. Not attractive, but 26.6% depreciation over 5 years or $4,700. The Toyota RAV4 at 27.2% or $8,800. Then after that, going down, you can read it yourself, but Hyundai Accent, Toyota 4Runner, love the 4Runners, Chevrolet Corvette. Now the Chevrolet Corvette, it's as if they've ignored the new model, because the new model as a 2-year used is, even with the huge crash on Corvette values, they're now selling a two-year-old models at MSRP. That's where the asking prices have gone, but they're saying you're going to lose $22,000 for 5 years. But what's interesting is because there's a wait time to get a Stingray, if you buy a Stingray new now, you might just be able to sell it at MSRP. But I am starting to see Stingray Corvettes, brand new, available at MSRP, and I even got offered to order one with I'm being promised it'll show up this summer. I don't know if I should believe them or not. My last question was, will the deposit be 100% reimbursed if I choose to take my 911 convertible order, or whatever reason I might not take the Corvette? Will I get it back? But Marie is very much, the WB is right. These prices are based on if you buy at MSRP, not if you buy with a markup or dealer fees. Avoid all those. Don't pay for doc fees. Don't pay for dealer fees. Tell your dealer you're not interested in buying if they're going to have fees or markup. Shop around. Someone will sell to you now without markup on it. You've WB, thank you for letting me know that summer does sound right now for Canada. And I'm very tempted to switch the Lightning for a Corvette. We'll get into that a little later on in the live. We've got the Chevrolet Corvette, very tempting. Nissan Kicks, wouldn't touch that with a 10-foot pole. Don't want to even be seen in one. I'll walk home instead. And you've got the Subaru Impreza. I wouldn't steal one. But if someone threw me the keys and told me drive it like it's stolen, well, I would. I think the Subaru Imprezas are cool. I like how they look. So the overall average of the top 25 vehicles in regards to depreciating the least on the market, it works out to overall average. They're saying 38.8%. That's the overall market average, because this list is the worst depreciation on the list is the Subaru Impreza at 27.8%. But overall market average is 38.8%, or $17,221. So you look at the overall average, a lot of vehicles, the average vehicle works out to cost of ownership between buy price and sell price is $17,221. A Porsche 911 Coupe at $18,000 is like having a regular, normal, average vehicle for cost. Because you're going to buy it at a price, you're going to sell it at a price, and you'll be reimbursed most of those payments. Yeah, your Porsche 911, you need to swing a $35,000 or $4,000 monthly payment. But after 5 years, if you sell it, and you sell it at a price that is $18,000 less than your initial buying price, all those payments are coming back to you. So that's kind of my idea. However, I wasn't thinking of a coupe. I kind of wanted a convertible, but now that I have two used Porsche 911s in the garage, maybe I'd keep one. If I get a new one, maybe I could get a coupe and just keep one in the garage, because 5 years of ownership at $42,000 is like what? $8,000. It's $8,000 per year, roughly. That's a little less tempting. The coupe a manual coupe starts to become a very tempting proposition. So that is our episode for vehicles that depreciate the least. So those are vehicles that you want to buy. Those are vehicles that are going to save you thousands of dollars, because they're everyone always thinks about how much is it going to cost me per month, and they're not thinking about what's the resale going to look like. And a small part of the reason why I prefer a Ford F-150 over a Ram is resale. The F-150 has better resale, and after 5 years, it won't rust. I've seen a lot of Dodge Rams, and Ram 1500s and GM trucks that after 5 years are starting to have a bit of rust on all the fender flares and corner cabs. That the rust has started. So that means at year 10, it's going to be perforated. That affects your resale value. The F-150, they're not 100% aluminum, as I sometimes hear in the comments section, not our live chats, because you're all pros, but comments left on the channel. Especially shorts. Shorts, you get people that are just there to troll. And they're like, oh, I'll buy a Ford when they stop making the frames out of aluminum. The frame isn't made out of aluminum. It's made out of high-strength steel. But I like a Ford truck because I like how it looks. I like the power. I like the fuel economy. The Toyota Tundra with the 5.7-liter V8 used to have, pretty bad fuel economy. And the resale on the F-150 was better than the Ram and the GM. So for me, it made sense to pay a little bit more per month to get that and more back when you go to sell your vehicle. And I really thought that the Lightning would cost me very little. I figured worst case scenario, depreciate by 10 grand on trade-in, or that maybe I'd sell it for the same price I bought it for after 6 months. But that's depreciated a lot because Ford has dropped the price. And here's the problem with price drops. Everyone in the media is like, yay, Tesla dropped their price by 10 grand. Yay, Ford Lightning's dropped by 10 grand. Isn't it amazing? It sucks if you're an owner. It really, really sucks. So Ford, Tesla, stop doing this. Just change the product, if anything. Run it to the end of the line and then come out with a whole new model with a different battery technology. So then you can say, well, with this battery technology, that's why the price is this price. Because it really sucks when you have your vehicle value ruined. Because your real cost of ownership is not your monthly payment. Your real cost of ownership, of course, is the month. It's not even the monthly payment unless you're keeping it for 20 years. But if you're going to be reselling it, it's all about How much did you pay? How much did you sell it for? How much money did you put into maintenance and repairs? And so far, I'm not horrified. I've brought in the black Porsche 911 2000 for maintenance, and I put $800 I think into it, and it was an oil change, an air filter, and something else. Something to do, yes, the fan. I had to switch a relay for the fan because the intermittent fan, the slow running, when you're running at slow speeds, that fan was not coming on. Yeah, outside of reviews, Kia Rio. Yeah, that surprises me. I'm really surprised by that. All right, so we've got episode 5 coming down, folks. Thank you so much for sticking with us. You are fantastic. We're pre-Christmas. Merry Christmas to everyone. Christmas in 2 days. Christmas Eve tomorrow. So this is a Christmas pre-Eve special. So thank you for being here for the Christmas pre-Eve special. I'm sorry. I wish the phone is filming right now. Otherwise, I'd send a text to Marie saying, I need a refill. I need to say pros to the community here. We've got great people, friends here sticking with us through the show. So thank you. Episode 5, cars and trucks. To avoid these cars and trucks. You will ruin your bank. You will burn a hole, not just through your pocket, but you'll have third degree on that skin. You'll have bubbling on the leg, if that's where you keep your wallet, with these cars and trucks. So cars and trucks to avoid because they will break your bank account and then destroy you on resale. So every vehicle is going to break our bank account these days. Really, they're all going to hurt our bank account, but some are going to hurt more and they're going to hurt a whole lot more because of when you go to resell. If Ridgeview was in tonight, I'd say Ridgeview, send Marie a private message over, send her a messenger message saying, come show the baby and bring down that bottle. But I think, you know what? I think I'll carry a bottle in the back. I'm back on the wagon, you could say, because I'm now being responsible. I'm having, 1 or 2 drinks per week, generally with the show. With the friends here. So I have to be in a friend setting. That's the rule I've set for myself. Vehicles that depreciate the most over 5 years, folks. This information is going to save you thousands. So please help out this small family business. Give us a thumbs up, which is the like button. Share with this information. Drop a comment if you're watching this. If you're in the live, well, join the live conversation. If you're watching this as a mini episode, please drop a comment and turn bell notifications on. So there are some definite vehicles to absolutely avoid at all costs. And the first one on the list, there's so many reasons to avoid it. I was tempted by a used Maserati, not the Quattroporte, the 2-door that actually looks amazing and essentially has kind of a Ferrari engine. So I was pretty into this. The Maserati Quattroporte, over 5 years, will you lose 64.5% of its value. Isn't that insane, folks? You will lose $90,588. Everyone thinks the cost of ownership is about, is the vehicle, does it cost me $500 a month, $1,000 a month, $1,500 a month, $3,000 a month? That's the cost of a vehicle. No, the cost of a vehicle is your monthly payment temporarily, gas, the fuel, maintenance, and repairs. And guess what? The Maserati Quattroporte is going to be expensive to maintain, and it could be expensive to repair. Surprisingly, some Maseratis are actually pretty darn reliable. They're actually pretty inexpensive to run because they don't break very often, certain years. So you could look into that. There's websites to look at overall cost of ownership, but some Maseratis are actually pretty cheap to run when it comes to maintenance and repairs. Now, the oil change, if you do it at the dealership, they will destroy you. Insurance, thank you, Lawrence Merrick. Thank you so much. I love it when the community here, we come together to learn together, and that's a great point. Insurance on your Maserati is going to hurt. And when you go to resell it in 5 years, it's going to destroy you. $90,000, almost $91,000 of loss. So if you plan on keeping your Maserati for 20 years, that's fine if you only put on 5,000 miles per year, because don't expect to get, 400,000 miles out of this. This isn't a Toyota Corolla. You're going to lose a ton of money on it. Now, the BMW 7 Series is high cost of ownership, because of high maintenance, high repairs. It's going to depreciate over 5 years by 61.8%, meaning you're going to lose it's going to cost you $72,444, because no matter what your monthly payments are, it's all about how much did you buy for, how much did you sell for, the difference, that's your true cost. And we talked about in another episode, please catch it after you watch this episode. We talked about cars and trucks that are the best to buy because they depreciate the least. Well, a Porsche 911 Coupe for 5 years should cost you about $18,000 to run. Who cares? If you can handle the $4,000 per month payment because you have it off in a bank account. This is how I've seen it. I've got money off in a bank account and I'm like, hey, I could run a 911 Coupe for, okay, $4,000 per month. That's really going to hurt me. If I run it for 10 months, it's going to cost me temporarily $40,000. But then when I go to sell it as a 10-month-old Porsche and I sell it for, $6,000 or $5,000 less than what I bought it for, I just drove the vehicle for $500 a month. You can't get a vehicle. You can't get a monthly payment anywhere. Please, in the comments section, let me know. At least in Canadian dollars, you can't get a vehicle these days for $500 a month. Not one that you'll like or that's respectable. I like a vehicle that's, whether it's a Toyota Corolla hatchback, that's respectable. It doesn't have to be a Porsche. But your cost of ownership on that Porsche 911, it's like $500 a month if you sell it after 10 months. And I see the same to be true for Corvettes. My only thing that worries me is that the Corvette right now, there's a few findable from time to time new Corvettes at MSRP. And now that you can get them in 6 months, I'm worried that if you can start ordering them and if they start being available on dealer lots at MSRP, then we're going to be back to it depreciating the dealer will probably, because of interest rates, have to ask $20,000 less for a 1-year-old Corvette. Because of interest rates versus new interest rates, they'll have to ask $20,000 less, meaning that they'll give me on trade about $26,000 or $27,000 less. Well, that's a lot per month. If I'm looking at about $2,000 to $2,700 per month to drive that Corvette, because let's say I buy it at 100 Canadian, and if there starts to be Corvettes available on lots new at MSRP, my 1-year-old Corvette, they will list at 80, because 80 plus the difference in interest will make about 95,000. So then in monthly payments, it'll still be about $5,000 less than the new one. Well, they're going to give me about 75. I don't want to spend $25,000 to drive a Corvette 1 year. And I am dumb or brave enough. I'm either dumb enough or brave enough to drive a Corvette in the winter. I would have bought a Corvette this week. Marie said, go for it. Marie loves the Corvette. And she even said, the WB's right. She thinks it looks better than the Porsche 911. She likes the styling of the Corvette. And she's like, do it. And I told the guy, hey, here's the photos of my Lightning. I know I'm going to be upside down. I have negative equity. But, make it not too horrifically painful, and I'm in, let's go. And that was at 9:45 in the morning, and he said, it's sold. The night before at 7:30 at night said, I'm going to calculate it for you and work on it tomorrow morning. Instead, he worked on someone else. That's fine. Vehicles that depreciate the most. Maserati Ghibli, 61.3% or 5 years of ownership from buy price to sell price, not trade-in price, sell price, $58,623. BMW 5 Series Hybrid, you're going to lose a whopping 58.8% or basically $38,000. Cadillac Escalade ESV, going to lose about 64 grand to drive that for 5 years or 58.5%. The BMW X5, about 58.2% or $44,800. Infiniti. This screen, I don't have Maddie to tell me what I'm doing wrong here, but Infiniti QX80. I thought the Infinitis held their value better than this, but 58.1% depreciation or $47,300. Again, a Maserati, not surprised. Levante, 57.8% or almost 56 grand to drive that for 5 years. I'm surprised Jaguar wasn't higher on this list. They depreciate a lot in our area, but Jaguar XF, you're going to drive that for 5 years and lose 40 grand basically. But I saw a 2-year-old Jaguar, and it wasn't an XF, and it had already lost about 30 grand Canadian over just 2 years. So I can't remember if it was an XF, but I feel like the Jaguars depreciate more than that. The WB, we will talk about my. I'm gonna string you along here. We're gonna talk about my Corvette build choice in just a moment when we talk about the Porsche and Corvette market crashing. All those wild media headlines. There's such a silly bunch running after money. So you got the Cadillac Escalade at almost 60 grand for 5 years. Audi A6 at 38,200. Volvo S90. That's going to cost you $35,000 to run for 5 years. Nissan Armada, not surprised they're not an attractive vehicle. Depreciates by 55.7%. I'm surprised it's not more, but people do need 8-seaters, 7 and 8-seaters, and there's very few on the market, and they're all pretty darn expensive. So I think that's what's keeping this from not depreciating much more, because it is fugly. It is fugly. 55.7% depreciation, or $36,875. Mercedes-Benz S-Class. Yeah, Mercedes generally, as soon as they're off warranty, they all depreciate by quite a bit. Almost all. 55.5%, or $57,000. Tesla Model S. Didn't used to depreciate a ton, now depreciates a ton. 55.5% depreciation, or $60,000 to run it for 5 years. BMW 5 Series, that's costing you almost $40,000. The BMW X5, also almost $40,000. The Lincoln Navigator, near the bottom of the list, but still on the list. 54.7%, or $53,582 to run for 5 years. Now, we've got the BMW X5M at almost $66,500, so $66,277 average depreciation, average cost to run that BMW X5. Land Rover, I can't believe we didn't see more Land Rovers higher up on this list, but 5 years of Land Rover, Range Rover. How many times are they going to throw Rover in there? That's a lot of Rover. So let's not say come on over, Rover. Let's say no to the Rover, because it's going to cost you almost $69,000 to drive that for 5 years. And the Cadillac XT5 costing you $31,737 to drive for 5 years. Now, the overall average for depreciation across all vehicles on the market is 38.8%, or roughly $17,221 to drive the vehicle for 5 years. Remember, if you watch the video where I cover the vehicles that depreciate the least, a Porsche 911 Coupe costs $18,000 to drive for 5 years. The average auto market depreciation for a vehicle is $17,221. So save yourself some money, buy a Porsche 911 Coupe, because driving that is going to cost you less than a lot of vehicles that cost more. Of course, unless you keep your vehicles for, 20 years. But even, heck, 20-year-old Porsches are selling for their original selling price. People aren't. WB, great point. People are not trusting Elon to hold the price on the vehicle. And I know I'd buy another Lightning if it was an XLT standard range, because I have confidence I could happily own that for over 5 years and not be upset with either the monthly payments or really anything about it. But knowing myself, really, if I'm more honest with myself, I probably would sell it after, 1 or 2 years, and its resale value would worry me, because Ford dropped the price by 10 grand, so who's to say they won't do it again? So that does worry me, and people aren't trusting Elon to keep the price on their vehicles. They used to hold their value pretty decent, quite well, and now they're not holding their value. So the WB, thank you for making that great point. I myself should have caught on to that and pointed it out, but we've got a great community here. We're all taking care of each other, learning from one another, and having just a good time hanging out. And now this brings us to our next episode. So I'm going to time mark this to make life, actually Marie doesn't even have time to edit these anymore. It's going to make my life a little easier when I come to edit it. Please like, subscribe, join the community here. If you really want to join, really help out the community, you can always be a member and join, but just subscribing and sharing these videos and liking them. Heck, even if you really want to help out, before going to bed, turn your laptop or phone on, put one of the playlists on and let that run all night long. That really helps because it makes YouTube algorithm go, hey, the person watched more than one video in a row from this guy. He must not be that horrible, so we'll send it out and suggest it to other people who watch car content. So we're going towards the 6th episode of the night. Folks, we're going to be talking about the F-150 Lightning. I'm going to be completely brutally honest about it. What I like, what I don't like about my F-150 Lightning. It's not all fun and games like I was having here in this photo with when I used to be a wild child with long hair. Or is that a dog on my head? I don't know. I'm kind of bringing you news, so I kind of feel like I have to lie because I'm kind of a media source here, a source of information that falls under the media ban, and I think it must have to lie if I'm part of the media here. But no, in all seriousness, we will very shortly be talking. It is part of the plan here. We've got some Corvette colors here. Talk about a Corvette build. Talk about Corvette and Porsche prices going up and down. But let's just quickly cover this episode. Ford F-150 Lightning, my love and hate, or I prefer really like and dislike. Why I will sell this vehicle and why you might want to avoid buying or maybe really consider buying the Ford F-150 Lightning. Now, we did a live stream. If you're watching this as a mini episode, I'm saying this to you. We did a live stream where we talked a lot about electric vehicles, depreciation, vehicles that depreciate the most, vehicles that depreciate the least. And I've got a few things to say about this vehicle. And this vehicle is going to be perfect for so many people and not great for others. Now, EVs in general, here's my number one bone to pick with the Ford F-150 Lightning, and it's a bone to pick with all EVs. They depreciate, on average, more than the average. And I really like to have and own vehicles that depreciate very little because I love to change vehicles. I love experiencing new vehicles. I've got one woman in my life, one wife, one child to take care of, a daughter and a wife in my life, and I will do everything to take care of them, provide for them, and give them what they need. I don't feel that way about vehicles. Sometimes, I get these comments from people who seem to think like I'm almost like a bad guy for changing vehicles. Like, how could you sell your Bronco? I love to experience and learn about vehicles. And I have a channel where I need to know about vehicles. I need to talk to people about this. Now, Lawrence Merrick brings a great point. What about warranty coverage on the batteries? The batteries are guaranteed for 8 years or 160,000 kilometers, which must be 100,000 miles if you're in the US. So that warranty covers the battery, not just from breaking, but it also guarantees that the battery will not have more than 30%. It won't lose 30% of its capacities in regards to charge time, in regards to autonomy, that it won't, break down or be less of use by more than 30%. I'm not using the correct words there, but I think that describes, instead of using a word that I can't remember and might not mean as much to you, I've described the situation. So, and Peugeot says, it sounds like I have two women in my life. Well, I do have two women in my life, just a little baby, Layla and Marie-Pierre. So one woman, many, 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 many vehicles. So my main dislike with the vehicle is about depreciation. Electric vehicles in general are depreciating more, and the Lightning depreciated a ton this year because Ford dropped the price by $10,000. Of course, they said that, we're following Tesla, but where is Tesla's truck? Tesla's truck is just starting to show up. So did they have to drop that price by 10 grand? I would have loved to have an opportunity to sell it at not a huge, incredible loss and be able to learn about another vehicle. but I do not. And if I do change it, I'm going to have to find something that really doesn't depreciate much. And it's probably going to be either a Porsche 911 or a Corvette. But here is, or another Bronco. I'm very, very tempted by another Bronco. I know 2 Broncos would be crazy, but maybe a 2.3 liter, 2-door manual Bronco. My original order, which I kept changing to get my Bronco faster. I made all sorts of videos on how to get your Bronco faster because, well, hey, I'm Johnny from Johnny's Car Care and Reviews, and I am here to help save you money and help make your buying and ownership experience so much better. And that's why I also do some car care videos so that, I can mess up my paint job or I can cause a mechanical failure so that you don't have to deal with that. Now, I love or really like the idea of the technology on the Lightning. And every Ford owner that I know, every Ford that I've sold has not had issues with the Blue Cruise. But my Blue Cruise right here has been pretty horrific. Marie had, and this actually falls into the hate category. There's a solution to this. So hear me out, stick with me. I'll get you to the solution in case you're hating whatever brand vehicle, Toyota, GM, Chevrolet, Ram, Porsche, Audi, BMW, Mercedes, Nissan, Lexus, Infiniti, Kia, Hyundai. You might have this type of problem with all these new technologies with any of those brands. So please don't go anywhere if you're another brand lover. This is going to be helpful. So let me get to the story first, then we'll get to the solution. Marie was driving back from many towns over for a doctor's appointment with the baby, and a Ram 1500 was driving very close, like BMW levels of close behind her. And this Blue Cruise, for whatever reason, on the screen says imminent collision very often, almost always when you're in the left lane, even on a straightaway, you're in the left lane, in the right lane. So let's say I'm here and there's a transport 18-wheeler here. It slams on the brakes all of a sudden and says imminent collision. There's no warning before the braking. I've actually hurt my back because of this. And I actually have a long-term back injury, but I had some 6 out of 10 back pain, 7 out of 10 back pain for 2 days, which slowly diminished over 3 weeks because the vehicle braked from 120 to 100 in a quarter of a second. Now, Marie's coming back from this doctor's appointment with our daughter in the back seat, newborn, fresh, having that fresh baby smell. Not so fresh, babies don't smell that fresh. I don't know why people say they love the smell of babies. Anyway, it's not for me. So, coming back here, and the thing slams on the brakes, and it's done it for a Toyota Corolla, a small car. It does it for a lot of Ram 1500s and mid-size and full-size trucks. So this thing is in the left lane, and whatever is going on with the sensors or cameras thinks what's in the right lane is somehow in front of me. And when you're about to start passing, slams on the brakes, and then realizes it's wrong. And then, is at 100 kilometers an hour. And then you're like, no, I want to go back to 120. And then the adaptive cruise control, anyways, if you don't do anything, will bring you back to your initial speed. If it doesn't slam on the brakes, again, I was trying to pass a vehicle, and I was in the Blue Cruise mode, and the vehicle slammed on the brakes once, hit the brakes lightly 2 more times because of this imminent collision as I was trying to pass the vehicle. I got fed up, hit the gas, flew by. I'm happy there wasn't a police vehicle doing radar there, because he would have pulled me over. And he's like, why would you speed by someone in the left lane? I would have said, well, because my vehicle is being wild, and out of frustration, I just hit not the gas pedal, but the accelerator pedal. So that's my main big dislike with this vehicle. And then there's also just the overall complexity of the technology. That's also on my dislike list, because if I turn, there's no button that I've found yet, easily found, and I've looked through. Maybe there's tell me if I'm wrong, is there a Blue Cruise button to just turn off Blue Cruise? From what I can tell, I have to remove adaptive cruise control. So you've got the adaptive cruise control button right there. I have to go into the screen options. B-Raptor 24, howdy my friend. I have to go into the 15.5 inch vertical touchscreen. I have to go through different areas to then finally find where I can turn adaptive cruise control off, turn it off, then I don't have Blue Cruise. But I also don't have adaptive cruise control. But I want adaptive cruise control, but I do not want Blue Cruise. Now the solution, if you're having any problems with no matter what brand you're running, if you're having trouble with the technology, don't just light your car on fire. Don't just go online and complain about it like I'm doing right now. Talk to your dealership. I have talked to my dealership. I was in for an appointment for some other stuff, an alignment, and they were installing the heated steering wheel. Well, the heated steering wiring was already there, but they're programming and putting in the microchips. So I was finally getting my heated steering wheel. Love the heated steering wheel on this thing. It's one of my love the heated seats. They go from warm to very hot. Love the heated steering wheel. It's got one setting and it is nice and toasty, and I absolutely love it. But they did all the updates, but they didn't have time to do the whole, Blue Cruise 1.3 install. So I'm running on Blue Cruise. I found out I'm on Blue Cruise 1.0 from my understanding. And I'm going to get the 1.3, but they said, look, we've given the updates to the vehicle. Let us know if it continues to do so. So when I go back to work, I'm going to say, yeah, it's still doing it. It's not braking as severely. I'm not losing 20 kilometers an hour. I'm losing 10 kilometers an hour, but it still beeps and screams at me sometimes, but less beeping and screaming and red flashing logo in the screen, but still a lot of 5 or 10 kilometers slow down, and then it realizes, oh, I'm okay. So it's better, but not nowhere near perfect. It was darn right dangerous before. Now it's not dangerous. It's not nearly as annoying. It doesn't scream at me as often. But I want to get rid of this vehicle. But Ford dropped the price by 10 grand and I've got horrible resale. So if I want to get rid of it, my cost of ownership for 10 months will be a lot. $12,000 plus I had put cash down. Plus all the payments, it's going to be like 30 grand. 10 months will have cost me 30 grand. So at $3,000 per month, I'm like, you know what? I'll try to stick it out unless I make money with the TMF stock, because it should make money if interest rates come down significantly. What I love about the vehicle, well, I love the interior. You've got this beautiful stitching. I've got this two glove compartments. The top one, it looks like it's nice, beautiful, not shiny, blind you metal like cars from the 1940s, 50s, and 60s had these dashes that if the sun hit them, it would almost blind you. I just love the fit and finish. The seats, so comfortable. I love the options. I love the sound system is incredible. I love the space. I love the practicality. Look, I've got a phone charger right there. I certainly wouldn't do this, but you could be charging your phone and watching YouTube at the same time. Of course I wouldn't do that. That's illegal. But great options. I love the look of the touchscreen, but the complexity of the touchscreen is a bit much. They need to simplify this. I'd love it if dealers, when they have, let's say, a vehicle that's dangerously braking out of nowhere, I'd love it if all manufacturers had their dealers reserve time for issues that are in regards to road safety, that it's just immediate service. If you think about it, manufacturers will say, you know what, dealers, don't sell any more of that vehicle until the update is done, because otherwise it's a safety issue. I've got a serious safety issue and I'm not getting treated nearly as seriously as when a vehicle is unsold with some sort of safety issue. Heck, back in 2013, Lincoln MKZs and Fusions, the Lincoln MKZ was late by like 6 months because of the fuel pump, if I recall correctly. And the Fusion, they wouldn't sell them and they're taking them off the road because of a fuel pump. And that was like a long-term, maybe there'll be an issue. I never saw a single one have an issue. I don't think there was ever a single fire. Well, I could get seriously rear-ended. My daughter, we could be pushed and knocked right off the highway, and it's like, well, we don't have time to do it today or tomorrow, but we tried to do something quickly, and that's just the nature of the game. But that would be a general improvement for all dealers. Reserve time for anything that is essentially life-threatening. And manufacturers could pay dealers more, because obviously if they leave extra time open every single day, they're going to lose some time and pay mechanics sometimes money to not do anything. So there'll be lost time on the schedule, but manufacturers could pay for that lost time in order to increase customer satisfaction when they have something that's, darn right serious and evidently a problem. So I just love I love the key code on this. I love how I don't have to have my keys. I locked myself out, silly boy. I locked myself out the other day, texted Marie, asked her what the code was. She texted me back, got in, and my wallet was in there. So I was locked out and didn't have my wallet, and I was going to going away party for a colleague at the restaurant. So you can't show up with no wallet. And I wanted to get back into the vehicle, obviously. So it's great. I particularly am not having a great time with the fact that I overbought. For me, I was thinking the resale on this should be amazing. So who cares about the monthly payment? But a Lariat extended range is a little bit out of my budget. It's an amazing vehicle. I love it, but it's a little bit out of my budget. Great equipment, but that's also, keyless entry, push button, open roof. I threw on BF Goodrich KO2 tires on it. Love the lighting. And at night, let me tell you, at night, we've got photos of this here. The surround lighting at night is pretty classy. So if it wasn't for the surround lighting, I would have forgot 2 cases of beer. I bought a case of beer for my father-in-law and a case of beer for my brother-in-law. We're not supposed to do Christmas presents, but it's not going to be a Christmas present when they come on the 25th. It's a welcome to my home present. Don't feel obligated to drink them all while you're here present. But we would have forgotten them in there. They would have frozen and exploded everywhere. But the truck with its lighting was like, don't forget these here. I love that back tailgate coming down electronically, going up electronically. I love Ford's. You can have it as an option on all their pickup trucks. I love the tailgate step. It is incredible. The lighting, the box lighting, had I hit a little button, this box lighting would have come on. Look, Marie's happy. She spotted the beers. You got floodlights around the vehicle. So there's a little ledge here between my driveway and the grass because this was just built. I'm not going to fall over while I'm carrying stuff because it's lighting up where I need to go. Great look when it comes to the lights. That's not a great look. Sorry, that was not part of the lightning photos. That is not a great look. I've got Lily on my head. I'm surprised Winston in this live hasn't come and jumped on me yet. He's just really happy to be sitting in Marie's co-host chair. And you're not saying very much, Winston. I wish you could throw more conversation in so I could work on getting the right photos up on the screen. Winston, you can do a little more for us here. So these are the things I like and dislike about the Lightning. And back to the complexity issue on that touchscreen. I've owned this vehicle for 10 months. I should be ashamed to say this, but I've worked at a Ford dealer for almost 11 years. And these new 15.5, the 12-inch screen on the XLT standard range, which would have been more in my price range and more fit for me, I'd be loving it and not wanting to trade this at all if that's what I would have gotten. But the 12-inch screen is super easy and practical to use. The 15-inch screen, it's been 10 months. I'm still not fully used to it. I drove, and I'm going to make an edited video on this with, live kind of coverage in the vehicle. But I drove to the hospital an hour and a half away and back in freezing temperatures. Battery was fine. Loved the extended range battery for that. Love the fact that, 500 kilometers in winter or 300 kilometers in the summer cost me roughly $8 of electricity, folks. That's incredible. That's incredible. If I was running gas at $4 a gallon, or here $1, roughly generally playing around $1.70 a liter, 4 liters per gallon. So you can, $1.70 times 4 is what I'm paying per gallon. I drove out there and back. It cost me less than $8. Love that. Do not like the complexity of the touchscreen. Because I've owned this for 10 months and was like, why is my windshield freezing up? I'm having trouble seeing, and I'm going to run out of windshield washer fluid to wipe off the ice. What's going on? This thing doesn't heat enough. I was thinking, Again, I was thinking, I'm selling this. I'm getting back from the hospital. I'm selling this crap. It's out of my life. And it's not that it's crap. I love this truck when I understand the truck. So I had to go in, played while driving, not that safe, but while driving, had to fix this solution. Found that it's weird. You've got your temperature at the bottom of the screen. Let's see if I can get a picture of that. But we've got temperature at the bottom of the screen of that touch screen, and you pick your temperature. So you see here, you pick your temperature, you have your heated seats, smart way, heat less in the vehicle, but heat your seats. Smart trick, have your heated steering wheel. But just above, you've got your temperature button for colder or hotter. And the hotter button is red. And let's say I'm running at 23.5 degrees. It's red, the temperature. So you're figuring, well, it's trying to keep the cabin at 23.5 degrees Celsius. Wrong. You have to go and hit the button over on the other side of the dial, which is a little button with a gentleman or an individual sitting in a seat, and it shows that air can come on the windshield, your face, or your feet. And I already had all the air I wanted on the windshield. It was blowing out of there, max. I had to hit that button to then see that there's a button that has heat. Well, if I'm asking for 25 degrees in the vehicle, does it not make sense? I want 25 degrees Celsius, hot temperatures in the vehicle against that windshield. Oh no, you have to hit the button that says heat, and then it'll actually send you heat. So that's pretty ridiculous, not intuitive, not a great setup. I feel like some of the programming isn't done by real car people. And the Ford's technology for, driver safety and all this is the technology I like the best. Remember, Blue Cruise is rated the best system. I drove a Hyundai Santa Cruz and did not like the technology. When people were driving by, when they were in my blind spot, if I recall correctly, it was cutting the radio. And I was like, why is the radio volume being played around with? It wasn't very great when it comes to blind spot technology. And I think at some points it was even, if I recall, beeping at me. And I was like, this is the worst. I get frustrated when I don't mind if a vehicle wants to help me drive. I get upset if it takes my pleasure of driving away. So that's that. That's my love, hate, like, dislike of the Ford F-150 Lightning. I think that many people should, most buyers will think, I need the big battery. And big battery means big payments, that extended range battery. I think what people really need to ask themselves, what is my daily drive, and will my electric truck cover my daily drive? And buy it in regards to doing your daily drive, and just have a gasoline powered vehicle for when you want to drive on to your vacation. Now, Lily, great co-host here, come on, Lily, why don't you show them your actual face here? Here's Lily. Here's part of the JCCR family business. We've got Lily here who just got a haircut. I washed her today in between a crying baby who is always hungry. I don't know what's going on with that baby. But I washed and then I bottle fed while Marie gave the haircut. So these pooches are looking pretty good compared to what they looked like a few hours ago. So thank you very much, folks, for watching. That's the end of this episode, but the live stream's still going on. If you want to catch our live streams in all its glory and rants, catch us generally Sunday nights at 6 p.m. Now, this is a kind of pre-Christmas special, you could say. So we're doing this on a Saturday to give everyone more time with their family on Christmas Eve. Very important, the most important holiday for my family. A lot of things to focus on, pray about. So thank you so much for making it to this episode. Don't forget, like, share, subscribe, turn the bell notifications on, and do consider buying a Lightning, but try to buy the right Lightning. Keep in mind about depreciation, but these are great trucks. They're fantastic. They're fun. They're comfortable. They've got insane, amazing power. But like anything, it's not just all perfection. It's not all, what's the expression? Roses. It's not all flowers and roses. So, yeah, stay safe, people. Don't drink and drive. Be smart about that. Call a taxi or don't drink, but be smart. Please, everybody, be very safe. This vehicle will essentially drive itself but you still shouldn't be intoxicated behind the wheel. So take care of yourselves and your families this Christmas season. If you're in the live, please continue to stay tuned. We've got a couple more episodes. And if you're watching the mini episodes, please catch one of our videos. After watching this, watch one of our videos on vehicles that depreciate the most and vehicles that depreciate the least, because those are tricks to save you thousands of dollars. Or you can also catch a conversation about Porsche and Corvette prices completely collapsing. So let's get to that, folks. Now, I'm going to catch this right here. We've got slowest depreciation. I missed for that episode a great little background right here. So I'll use this just as a little plug. If you are not watching this as a live and as a mini episode, do catch our episode on the slowest depreciating cars. And guess what? There's a whole lot of Porsche 911, Toyota Tacoma, Jeep Wrangler, Honda Civic, Subaru BRZ, Chevrolet Camaro, Toyota Corolla, Subaru Crosstrek, Toyota CHR, and I'll say Mustang would also be on that list if they had a few more in those photos. But let's talk about here about Porsche and Corvette. So let's talk about, let's see, the WB has been waiting for this the whole episode. So let's talk about the Corvette first, and we'll slowly move to the Porsche 911. So just going to time market this episode 7. Welcome, folks, to Johnny's Car Care and Reviews, where we will talk about how there's been a huge price collapse when it comes to the 2019 Chevrolet Corvette, as well as the Porsche 911. Now, I know there's a lot of titles on YouTube saying that the prices on these vehicles have crashed. Before we get into this episode, do you really think that Corvettes and Porsche 911s are vehicles you should avoid? Guess what? I really don't think so. And I'm going to tell you why. I'm going to tell you how Porsche and Corvettes are vehicles that might cost you less to own than a Dodge Hornet. That's a vehicle that should depreciate quite a bit. Or, you know what? It will probably cost you less to own these vehicles than a Ram 1500. Or, in the comment section, please throw in some vehicles that you know that depreciate a lot, that aren't, let's say, the easy ones like Maserati, Jaguar, Mercedes. Corvette and a Porsche 911 will cost you less than a Mercedes. 911 will cost you about $18,000 to own for 5 years, or the convertible, roughly $40,000 to own for 5 years. And a lot of 20-year-old Porsches still sell for their original selling price. Now, Corvettes are great for not depreciating too much. And actually, the last few years, the big, huge crash is because for the last few years, 1, 2, and 3-year-old Corvettes were selling for $20,000 to $50,000 over MSRP as used vehicles. GM dealers are not allowed to sell Corvettes above MSRP according to GM rules. They risk getting into a lot of trouble if they do. So guess what? If you got a Corvette at MSRP because you're in a buddy-buddy situation with a dealer, a lot of dealers would sell vehicles to their buddies or contacts with the kind of like a unofficial contract of you'll sell that back to us in 6 months, 12 months, or a year and a half, 2 years, but you got to sell it back to us. So they'd sell it, they'd buy back. I tried to get one. I couldn't get one because I wasn't buddy-buddy. They were maybe afraid I'd hold on to one. They wouldn't even take my order. Now I found a dealer that would take my Corvette order, and here's why I would very much consider and almost bought a Corvette this week. Corvettes have crashed. That's the bad news and the good news. New Corvettes in my area are about 6 months to get one, and I can get one at MSRP, but the used ones, 2-year-old used Corvettes, are now selling at new MSRP price. So they're still above their original MSRP from 2 years ago. They're probably going to go back soon to a more reasonable amount. They'll probably go back to selling at the dealer for MSRP once a Corvette's 2 years old, from MSRP to minus $10,000, max $15,000 under MSRP. But for 2 years of driving, that's not a whole lot of money. If it costs you 10 grand between the price you buy and the price you sell at, if it costs you 10 grand for 2 years, how much really is that per month? That's going to be less than 500 per month, right? Less than 500 per month to drive a Corvette. Now, of course, if you got a Z06 Corvette at MSRP, well, then you're really going to laugh because you'll probably sell it over MSRP. But even Z06 Corvettes, I'm seeing 2019 Z06 Corvettes selling. So here's a 2019 Chevrolet Corvette Z06. It was $82,000 US. Now here's the price crash proof. I found one in Canadian, a 2019 for 100 grand. So it's now selling as a 4-year-old vehicle, essentially at a little, and actually it had a bit of equipment on, so it's a little slightly under MSRP. So not expensive to run at all, less than $500 per month to run, probably works out to about $200 a month to run. And hey, Ford Bronco is a great vehicle to own as well, because my first Ford Bronco I sold for more than the MSRP, and my second one cost me $2,000 to run for 14 months. It cost me like what, $120 a month? Between my buy price and sell price, there was $2,000 for 14 months. So whatever, $120, $130 a month. You can't get an old winter beater and run it for that kind of, unless you're very, very lucky to run it for that kind of cost of ownership. Now, the Corvettes have gone down in price. We're starting to see, this is in Canadian. So you have a 2024 Chevrolet Corvette 3LT for $125,000. The 3LT, I think, is great for some people. If you've got extra money hanging around, I don't feel like it's necessary. I don't feel like, if you've got a lot of money, great, good, jump on it. But it's not the model I would get. It's $125,000. Here we have a luxury tax. Every vehicle over $100,000, you pay 20% tax on the amount over $100,000. And then once they total that up, they still charge you the 15%. Anyways, it works out to, it's wild. You can have a $110,000 vehicle and they charge you the 15% tax on the whole amount, but then they also on that last 10 grand charge you $2,000 in taxes. What a ripoff. Thank you very much, government. The government's increase taxes, invent reasons, invent crises in order to tax you more, but they also invent crises in order to remove your freedoms. And, electric vehicles being forced on us. It's a freedom being removed. Some people agree with it. Some people don't. Let me know in the comments. But it can be a bit of a nuisance. So there's now a few 2024 3LTs for sale. Brand new. Now, 2023 3LT right here. Z51 package. That is a package I would definitely get. Beautiful, beautiful vehicle. I think Marie finds this more interesting than the Porsche because when we were in Florida, she thought this was a Ferrari. Now, the cost of ownership, people are loving this model. Now, the older model Porsche, old model Corvette depreciates more than a Porsche 911. But this model of Corvette isn't going to keep, the values have crashed. They're not going to continue selling for, 10, 20, 30, $50,000 over MSRP when they're 1, 2, or 3 years old. That's going to be a thing of the past. All vehicles are crashing. So those articles saying, oh my goodness, this is a big deal. Corvettes are crashing in price. So, you probably shouldn't get one. That's silly. These vehicles are great vehicles to buy. You're going to have a ton of fun driving them. I do suggest if you want more of a comfort ride, do get the system that would have the adaptive suspension, so you can have both a sporty and a comfort ride suspension based on your driving situations. But we are going to start seeing more and more Corvettes at MSRP. Once we start seeing them on the lots, if we do start seeing them on the lots and there's no order times, then yes, the new one, you'll probably see trade-in value if you buy at, 100,000 Canadian or, 90,000 US dollars. If you buy new and there's some on the lot when you go to trade it in that are available, they're going to have to sell them for about 15, if it's 1 year old, they're going to have to sell them for about $15,000 less than the ones on the lot because of interest difference. New cars will have less interest than the used vehicles. And as such, the 1 year of ownership might cost you $20,000. Might. And that all depends if inventories remain, if it's still an order situation. Now, the Porsche 911 still has about a 1.5 year order wait time on it. So their high prices aren't going anywhere anytime soon. And traditionally, they've always held their value quite a bit. And we're actually starting to see, what is this? This is a Porsche 911 Cabriolet. And it's basically, and I built it. I can't know the exact equipment on this, but 179,000 Canadian, that's basically MSRP and available. So even the Porsche 911 is probably in a situation where 5 years of ownership will cost you about $18,000, which is what, like $500 a month? It's like owning a Toyota Corolla or a RAV4. It's, I think of one vehicle that depreciated a lot. You think back with those Chrysler 300s, for example. That is a vehicle that if you traded after 2 years, you're at a huge loss, a huge cost. You're way better off buying a Porsche 911. Now, the Corvette I would buy, the WB, the Corvette I would buy would be a 1LT, either a 2LT or a 1LT. But the 1LT, because of the Canadian luxury tax for going over 100 grand, I would probably take a 1LT that starts at 94,000 Canadian and throw the Z51 package on it and choose the more aggressive race style seats. Those would be my main options and potentially my only options. Now, I believe, if I recall correctly from the build-in price, there is an option for, the race seats force the seats to be black, and that's where I'm not sure, because I like the idea of having the standard seats in black and red. If I could have the race seats in red or black and red as well, I'd probably definitely go with those racing seats. But the Z51 package is a must-have package, I think, for resale value and just overall fun. Now, of course, that means the vehicle won't come with 4 seasons, but 4 seasons are illegal here in any so if I did have it as the occasional vehicle, if Maddie has a doctor's appointment and has to take the Bronco out, I would maybe even get winter tires for this and have those serious summer only Z51 tires, the exhaust sound, everything that's amazing with that Z51 package. Maybe definitely the Z51, maybe the race package, but the WB, please let me know what things you would add to it. Which would you go 1LT, 2LT, or 3LT, and what would you add to it? Are you changing the mags? My color would probably be, I'm stuck between the darker blue and the lighter red. Those are the colors I'm thinking for the Corvette. So please let me know the WB, but this machine is incredible. Like, look at this. Engine in the back, visible. And remember, all Corvettes are Targa, but automatic. You have a button and your roof goes and tucks in the back, and now you've got a nice open area. So I wouldn't pay more for a Corvette because the Targa is amazing and it's no extra charge. And these seats, oh boy, I'm really getting into this. I love this. These seats look amazing. So red or blue exterior with those seats. Blue exterior with red seats. Throw some white stripes on it. You've got the U.S. loving Corvette, the Corvette American flag edition. That would be very tempting. Now, these colors aren't coming out as well on the screen, and I'm sorry about that. But it's not this bright orange like you're seeing on the screen. It's a medium red. Yeah, the R-Raptor, you don't have a desire to own one, but you're looking at them. Now, looking to purchase, is it because you're thinking about resale? Because I think the days of buying at MSRP and then selling well over MSRP, I think those days are pretty much done. The WB, thank you very much. I'll be looking forward to your comment. You can even send it to me privately on Instagram at Johnny's Car Care and Reviews. We also have Facebook. You can join us on everyone. You're welcome to follow me on Facebook at Johnny's Car Care and Reviews. Now, a bit of a sad story to end all this Corvette talk. I hope the Corvette never disappears. I know there's the electric Corvette that's come out, the EV. Will that mean that the Corvette gasoline-powered engine disappears? Yes, if they sold a lot of them. The Challenger and Charger are gone. Now the Challenger ends December 22nd. That was the last day of production. Why did it have to end? Because of carbon taxes, because companies that have a low mile per gallon range, manufacturers need to slowly get their fleet average to 50 miles per gallon, and there's punishment fines along the way in the years to come. Dodge was paying billions of dollars in fines per year because people really love this vehicle. There's a lot of sales for the Challenger going down, and it takes a lot of gas. So it was ruining their fleet average. So they've had to drop it. It'll come back as an EV. Now the Corvette, that's low sales volume, so it should survive. But it makes you think, what's Ford going to do? What's GM and what are Ram going to do with those trucks that are nowhere near 50 miles per gallon? R Raptor, thank you. What are they going to do? Well, they need to sell. They can't sell 500,000 F-150s and make that mile per gallon range. So what do? They either sell them for more, so they have the money to pay off. They don't pay off the fines of the government. They go buy tax credits, carbon credits from Tesla. And what does that mean? Tesla becomes much more competitive, and you just paid your competitor to dig a grave for you. You're like, hey, please go dig that grave I'm going to jump into in 10 years from now because the Democrats are ruining this company. So what do? They try to survive, and they get rid of really cool stuff like this. Yeah, man, Variety Channel. Thank you for making the show. Hello, dude, to you as well. Howdy, my friend. Thank you for making it in. So that ends this episode. So a little, not quite, 15-minute episode, trying to make each little episode a little quicker. Now we're on to the end, the last episode of the night, and almost being that this is the longest we've ever been on, but I might be off for a couple of weeks, so I guess I need more material to cut up. And there's a few courageous warriors here with me who are still in the show, so thank you very much for still being in the live stream. We will talk about this partially now, but more so later. This could end up being a theme. We'll see if it catches on at all in the mini episodes. If the mini episodes catch on, we have a few thousand views, well, we might start be talking about this and keeping track of this on a more regular basis. But let's talk about kind of a big subject here. Really huge subject. So let's see where we're going to start. All right. Episode 8. Is this the end of democracy or a civil war? Please, folks, beware. The media, it seems like we've been on the last decade or so, definitely the last 4 years, we've been on this pace of the media constantly scaring us, constantly keeping us in a mode of fear and division. And all I can say, I'll get to this in the conclusion, but I hope we can all start to appreciate, minimum tolerate, but hopefully appreciate each other and not let the media get us at each other's throats, because we all need, as normal human beings, we all need to be working together to make sure we hold on to our actual freedom of movement, freedom of speech, so that when you oppose the current planned governance and the planned laws, if you oppose those laws, you don't somehow fit into the hate speech category just because you oppose something. So, and we've seen that. We've seen it. We've seen political groups that basically, if you don't agree with them, well, then you're a racist and you should be canceled and lose your job. And this is wild. And I'm not out of line here, because apparently you can also even lose the right to vote for someone. And, I'm not here to say, go vote for Trump. He's great. I think there's, like everyone, we all have our pros and cons. We all have our problems. No one's perfect, and Trump definitely is not perfect. If you're a Trump lover, it would help the people who aren't Trump lovers maybe be more open to him if there was less this is the greatest guy ever type attitude. We all have our faults. We all make mistakes, and we need to accept people as well as they are, imperfect. But here's the thing. We all need to be able to express ourselves. And that's why we all need to be kind to one another and not be, allow ourselves to be put into these little groups where all we do is fight and bicker and troll each other online. Because this is what's going on, folks. We're being presented like we have two choices. Pick the end of democracy or have a civil war. Essentially, what has happened in Colorado is despicable for anyone who loves a democracy or I think in the United States, you call yourselves actually a constitutional republic. Yeah, you're a constitutional republic, not a democracy, but the notion of democracy, freedom of vote, freedom of choice, freedom of movement, freedom of life, liberty, and health. So essentially the idea that, the Constitution was made so that governments were responsible just for making sure that we're safe, but not safe from everything. Like, safe from being sick, so let's take away all your freedoms, which ends up just being a really bad cold. But Colorado took Trump off the ballot on the notion, not the idea, the lower courts and the Supreme Court took him off the ballot with the idea that he is an insurrectionist. And that is absolutely insane because, well, I don't think they really knew how to properly define what an insurrection is. It requires treason. It requires several factors that did not occur on January 6th. And now California Democrats are pushing to follow Colorado's lead. Their logic is, if Colorado did it, we have to do it. Otherwise, we're not democratic. So their solution, essentially, and they like to compare this to World War II. They like to compare this to, World War II Germany, and essentially that if Trump is elected, that you're going towards a dictatorship. And as an outsider, I'm not an American. I only visit the United States as my only holiday spot. Love the United States. Amazing country with amazing people. Love going to the United States, whether it's Maine, Florida, North Carolina. Love the United States. But here's the thing that I see as an outsider. You've got the media presenting you with an option. They're saying, we've got to take him off the ballot. We have to make sure that people aren't allowed to vote for him to avoid a dictatorship, to avoid a tyranny. But by making it that people can't vote for someone, does it make sense to enact behavior, to do actions that dictators or tyrants would do in order to avoid a dictatorship or a tyranny? No, it's like using the logic of, oh, well, I had to kill them because, maybe they would have killed me. It's not as if January 6th, people rushed the Capitol with arms, weapons, and tried to overthrow the government. They didn't try to overthrow the US government and replace it with a new government, with new senators, with new politicians. They didn't try to force themselves into positions of power. An insurrection requires that people are trying to overtake the government, that it's a treason, that people are really making an active, violent act, either violence by huge, dangerous numbers that far exceed the number of people that they're trying to overthrow, so that by sheer numbers there's a threat to life, so that essentially you hand over power and you say, okay, well, I'm handing over my power because I'm so fearful of this huge crowd. But essentially you need to be armed. And it's pretty wild because, there's the videotape of what actually went down at the Capitol. Shows that people weren't armed. Doors were often opened for them. People who were handcuffed were somehow, and who had the builds of FBI agents, were somehow taken into private rooms, filmed now because the Speaker of the House has released this video footage, because before it was being hidden by the Democratic Speaker of the House, but now a Republican Speaker of the House has actually, and who cares what party you're for? Though the videos of the January 6th Capitol, they're calling it an insurrection, but the riot at Capitol Hill in the building, anyone who likes freedom and democracy, those videos should have been shared. And anyone who blocks those videos from being shared is undemocratic, is performing an act that is taken on by people who don't want freedom, who don't want people to be able to choose. Because if you don't have information and you don't have options, so you don't have freedom of choice. So there is freedom of choice that was being taken away. That's part of a whole propaganda system, and the media, I can't believe they're they didn't catch on the first time, thinking how wrong it is that the videos were not shared. But I encourage everyone to watch those videos. Police officers literally took people handcuffed, individuals off to the side, unhandcuffed them, and then shook their hands, high-fived some other people. And then there's also footage from the outside of Capitol Hill when people were peacefully protesting, where you have footage of some police officers saying, hey, this, like when they got the order to shoot into the crowd, they're like, this is wrong. This is just going to stir them up, and they're going to, get really upset fairly, and could, rush us. It was seen by police officers as a very bad idea, that they felt that they were instigating the crowd and causing the crowd issues by, shooting projectiles into them that, could rip someone's face off. And remember, the deaths that occurred on January 6th were the January 6ers, the people who walked through the Capitol and were asked to leave and then walked out the door, and doors were open for them and they just walked out. Well, they probably felt that they're just peacefully protesting, but the result is some of them will spend 20 years in prison. That's wild as a notion. Now, I'm not saying people shouldn't be punished for going into areas that they're not allowed to go into, but when you have potentially hidden undercover agents, FBI or CIA agents, but when you have agents in the crowd who are saying, break down the barriers and rush in, and other people, now that we've seen the video footage that's been released from the Speaker of the House, the Republican Speaker of the House, all information should be shared anyways, no matter who's running the House. In any country, if you have a democratic country, people need to be able to choose to make their own opinion. And when you hide information, then that kind of automatically makes you the bad player in this. So you have people at Capitol Hill, you have individuals who were originally on the most wanted list who magically disappeared from the FBI most wanted list. But one of the individuals was actually saying, break down the barriers, and people in the crowd were saying, don't listen to him. He's police. Like they're saying, don't listen to him. He's police. So there are agents who are the FBI was trying to instigate a crime. And then we also have the video footage of actually Nancy Pelosi, she denied at the time the president's offer of thousands of troops to protect the Capitol. So if there is an insurrection, and if Donald Trump is an insurrectionist because he partook in an insurrection because he said, I know, to paraphrase what he said, I know you're going to go and march on Capitol, but I know you're going to do it peacefully. Well, if that's an act of insurrection, well, wouldn't denying troops that are needed to protect the Capitol, wouldn't that also be insurrection? In either cases, Trump and Nancy Pelosi, neither of them are insurrectionists. Because if we look at the actual term, meet Kevin, fantastic, very smart individual. But we've got here, you can watch the Meet Kevin video. He goes through some previous law because, in any democratic country, previous judiciary decisions are very important. Well, he goes off to say that, you could say the president is most likely considered someone who could be, under the term of an officer who is exercising significant authority pursuant to the laws of the United States, and excluded positions that were just investigative and informative. So basically, for you to not be allowed to run for an office, you need to be proven as an insurrectionist and an officer, kind of an officer of the law. And the president most likely under law will be seen as an officer of the law. So probably trying to make the argument saying that Trump wasn't an officer of the law as president, and as such, the role of president isn't an officer of the law. So even if he's an insurrectionist, he can run. That's probably not the best legal argument. Probably won't work at all, because a president or a prime minister, they're making laws. So they're making very important laws. So they're definitely someone who exercised significant authority pursuant to laws. So definitely someone who is an insurrectionist. And remember, this is a law, not remember because no one was around during the Civil War, but this was a law created to make sure that that after the Civil War, that you wouldn't have, the South generals run for president and win. It specifically was to block the very popular Southern generals from running for president and winning, and then just kind of, switching things up. Mind you, remember, the Democrats were the pro-slavery party and the Republicans were the anti-slavery party. But that doesn't make, now when we're hundreds of years later, this isn't about good and evil that I'm trying to talk about. And I don't think that would be a relevant conversation anyways. What is a very relevant conversation is to be an insurrectionist. Here on, Meet Kevin, it's great. He found on page 921 of the original whole law and the articles of law that were connected to that original, no insurrectionists will run for essentially, it doesn't say president in the law. It doesn't say you can't run for president. It says you can't run for an office of the law. So clearly, I would think that the president is definitely considered a office of the law, because you can veto laws. You're just part of the whole lawmaking process. So on page 921, it says, in order for a conviction of the crime of treason, the defendant must have intended to levy war against the United States and performed acts, and acts have been committed by himself and others in pursuance of such conspiracy or preconcert for that purpose. So I think it'd be very, very hard. I would hope that justice will be served, and at the Supreme Court of the United States, they're going to be able to see that, part of the definition of insurrectionist is that you are that you intend to levy a war against the United States. And I don't see how anyone could argue and say that Trump was trying to levy a war against the United States. The people that went into the Capitol were unarmed. Video footage has proven that the people in the Capitol were unarmed. So I don't think that's going to fly. So in order for a conviction of the crime of treason, the defendant must have intended to levy war against the United States. And that's just not the case here. And really, really not the case. So Meet Kevin talked about that a ton. So this whole conversation is based on the Colorado Supreme Court making history last Tuesday with an unprecedented ruling that former President Donald Trump, constitutionally ineligible to run in 2024. It's the first time in history that the Constitution's insurrection clause has been used to disqualify a presidential candidate. But to be an insurrectionist, you must be performing treason. And to be performing treason, you must be in the act of either in planning or physically in the act of levying war against the United States as within its borders. So you're an American, because otherwise it's just war, but you're an American trying to levy war against the United States itself. That's treason. And to be an insurrectionist, you must have performed treason. If you believe in democracy, you believe that the courts, you're innocent until proven guilty. And I don't think Trump, based on anything he's done, no one in their right mind could pull off the argument in a court of law saying that he performed treason. If he didn't perform treason, he is not an insurrectionist. he and anyways, he told people, I know you're going to go march on the Capitol, and I know you're going to do it, to exercise your democratic right, and I know you're going to do it in a peaceful manner. Some lawyers could argue, he's saying that sarcastically. It was like hint special secret words to actually say, go raise heck. And even if that were the case, there weren't weapons. So they weren't in a situation to be trying to overthrow government. So Section 3 of the 14th Amendment says oath-breaking insurrectionists can't serve as senators, representatives, presidential electors. Doesn't say presidential electors, or hold any office, civil or military, under the United States or under any state. So that was originally created to create, officers from the Southern armies, generals, officers, captains, majors, admirals, lieutenants, those people, that they couldn't then just blend into the new system. Oddly, how after World War II, some high-ranking, well, not high-ranking, but German officers and scientists, they infiltrated into the system. And that was okay. I guess they had too much to offer. But that's a different story for a different day. But when it says presidential electors, it doesn't mean someone trying to run for election as president. It says, specifically, the law does not say you can't run for president. But the president is an oath taker. So, and he's also, part of that important higher up lawmaking process. So I don't think that they're gonna, when they make it to the United States Supreme Court, they're gonna make the argument of saying, hey, you know what, we're not an oath breaker or whatnot. I think the whole argument is about Trump is not an insurrectionist because he is, no matter how you make the argument, there is no act of trying to levy war against the United States. There is no treason. And to be an insurrectionist, you have to have committed and been convicted of committing treason. So it's wild how the Colorado court system, without any, you're supposed to be innocent until proven guilty if you're in a democratic country, and without any charge of treason, and there never will be, unless something occurs in the future, but currently there could possibly be no charge of treason against Donald Trump, and they're just like, let's remove people's choice. And what is that going to do? That's going to upset people. So that's my main fear when the media and the current political system is offering you, it's almost like a choice of, you need to accept not having any choice. And after, a couple of years of being told to, get locked up, being forced in our homes, being forced vaccines, and some people were very hesitant because they are, turned out to maybe be actually worse than COVID. I know my dad, my stepdad now, I consider my father now, he's had COVID, he's had 5 vaccines, and he just had COVID again, and it almost killed him. So, and there are some numbers I could talk about that are actually pretty concerning, but that's on maybe a different story for a different day. But what happened at the Colorado Supreme Court? Well, the court was sharply divided. There's 7 Supreme Court judges. 4 voted that he can't run for election because he's an insurrectionist. I don't think they made it to page 921 of the adjacent document to that law. 3 said no, he can let people express their vote, let people decide whether they want Trump as president or not. And I think it's wild how you can have Biden in certain states that's going to run unopposed. The Democratic Party, instead of just, I don't want to say rigging an election, but I don't think it makes any sense to have Biden be unopposed in, I think so far it's 2 states, Florida, and I can't remember the other state, but he's the only option you get. That's not letting people express their choice. I think it'd be great if people for the Republican Party can choose whether they vote for Biden, whether they want Vivek to go forward, who's also anti-establishment, or they want Haley, I'm not interested in her, but whether it's DeSantis or whatnot, I think Vivek has a lot of interesting things to say. And I think that they'll find a way maybe to try to get it so that he is not the leader of the Republican Party if Trump successfully gets kicked out. But if Trump successfully gets kicked out, well, that's kind of the end of democracy. People have a right to choose. We're supposed to be able to voice our opinions when voting, whether you love or you hate Trump. If you love democracy, you're going to want him to be able to run against his other colleagues in the Republican Party and let the Republican Party on their own decide who they want. And the Democratic Party should not accept Biden being the only option in even for one state. It's absolutely unacceptable. And this is also baiting. If you ask, we'll get to the poll, but some Americans are worried that they're going towards civil war. There's definitely a movie coming out, I think it's in April, that's about civil war. And I hope that would never get to that. So 3 of the 7 justices on the Colorado Supreme Court dissented, arguing the former presidents didn't have a fair trial. Some were warned of the chaos and the aftermath of the ruling. So yeah, one of the Supreme Court judges was like, hey, this could lead to chaos. Or in other words, if you take off, maybe 55% of the population, whether you break it down to 45 or 65, a good chunk of the population want Trump as president. The Democrats are trying to push Biden and force Biden through to be president by making him the only option in certain states. So in both camps, you're going to have people who don't have the option to express their choice. And Trump is a choice. He's an anti-establishment choice. And I think I've been listening to a lot of what Vivek has to say, and I think he is an incredible anti-establishment choice. And I think that anti-establishment at this point is the way to go. Now, there's things under the Trump presidency from an outsider that bothered me. Firing of certain people, hiring of other people that maybe, were questionable in regards to qualifications. Kind of seemed like he threw in a team quickly together, but this time he's prepared. He has a list of, 63 individuals that he would highly consider for Supreme Court justice. Bobby Kennedy was asked who he would consider for Supreme Court justice, and he didn't know. I think he's got a really good offensive game, but his defensive game there wasn't on the ball. And I think Bobby Kennedy is another great anti-establishment option. I think he could potentially be a fantastic president, and he was a Democrat, but I think he left the Democrat Party to be an independent because he saw that where's the democracy in the Democratic Party? Clearly, his chances of becoming president as an independent are almost none. But he left the Democratic Party because he clearly saw his options to become president, or his chances of becoming president in the Democratic Party, as absolute zero. That's wild. Bobby Kennedy is a good option. He's someone who questions. He's a critical thinker. And he's not just trying to, just pour the planned agenda ahead. So from Colorado's presidential primary ballot, it flies in the face of the due process doctrine, Seymour wrote in his dissent. So this is from Colorado Supreme Court Justice warns of chaos after Trump ruling, source Newsweek. So continuing here, we've got Mail Online. Turley, a professor of law, added he believes the ruling endangers American democracy. January 6th was many things, most of it not good. In my view, it was not an insurrection, it was a riot, he said. Yes, for an insurrection to be an insurrection, people have to be armed. So Donald Trump, even if you would have told people, go march through the Capitol, even if you would have told them that, because they went through without any weapons, it's still not an insurrection. He would have been telling people to go break the law. But he would not have been telling people to go be insurrectionists because they're not armed, they're not trying to overthrow the government. So this is wild. So this is a time when we actually need democracy. Absolutely. Whether it's in Canada, the United States, we need real democracy. In Canada, we've got Pierre Poilievre, who is, it's wild. In Canada, it's a whole different story. You've got our current government that took away people's rights because while the trucker protests were very annoying for people who were living in Ottawa, and they were pretty loud, and there's a lot of diesel fumes, but they broke up that generally very peaceful protest. There was kids there's families. They broke up that political protest. They robbed people of their bank accounts. Hundreds of people were robbed of their bank accounts. You might have had your bank account closed if you donated money to the trucker rally. So would I trust this type of government to only allow us to have cryptocurrency, government cryptocurrency, and that be the only form of exchange of goods and services? Absolutely not. When they're already cutting people's bank accounts, stealing their money, taking their money away from them, cutting them off from being able to live because they sent money to the trucker rally. That's wild. That's not democracy. That's the type of behavior that tyrants do. And I used to be a card-holding member of the Liberal Party, and those days are done. Absolutely done when the Liberal Party has gone to breaking people's basic rights. And people having basic rights, that's the foundation. That's like the bottom of the pyramid for democracy. It's like the bare minimum that you need to make sure that you ensure as a government is to not violate people's rights. And now that they're, in Canada as well as in the States, they're just printing off all sorts of money, trillions of dollars in the States, billions of dollars in Canada, 10 times less population, less than 10 times the money. But it is wild because when you print off money, when your government prints off money and sends it to other countries, well, that's a form of taxation. How much they spend is a form of taxation because we will pay for it when we go to the store and buy anything. And we have been paying for it. Groceries doubled because of this nonsense printing off of money. And we know that the money that's getting sent to Ukraine, it's been proven. It gets mismanaged, it gets stolen and abused, and some of it buys weapons. But they're buying weapons from corporations that give money back to politicians. Sorry, that's inaccurate. They give money to lobbyists, who then give money to politicians. If that's not dirty money laundering, if it's not very intelligent money laundering, then I don't know what it is. Maybe I'm just an opinionated fool. So this is a time that we need democracy. We need people who are obsessed about proper procedures, about rights, who don't get swayed by big emotional talks and don't fall into fear. We need stoic individuals, people who will not just get allow themselves to be fear-mongered by the media that's saying that, well, you know what, if Trump runs and wins, we're going to have a tyrant or a dictator, and that'll be the end of democracy. So let us do all sorts of acts that destroy your democracy and your freedom. That doesn't make sense to me. And it doesn't make sense either when there's the fear-mongering that says that if Donald Trump isn't on the ballot, we'll have civil war. I think under no circumstance should there be civil war. Doesn't need to be that. We have power. If our democracy falls due to actions like the ones being taken now, we have the choice. We can just all not go to work. And it's funny, if none of us work, there's going to be a lot of billionaires who are going to be really unhappy, and that will make things move. No violence is needed, and no violence should be performed. We just all have to, get together, bring some snacks. If they're trying to scare us because they're saying aliens are attacking or we've got this new pandemic that will kill us, the last pandemic certainly wasn't deadly. The vaccine, maybe. There's a lot of 35 to 45-year-olds, the people in the prime of their life, generally the healthiest people in society. There's a lot of them, a whole lot more of them dying than there used to be, 2019 and prior. Life expectancy has gone down tremendously. And during that time period, if you didn't want to get a vaccine, you probably, if you're in the military or the health system, you lost your job. You couldn't go places. You got verbally bullied. Really, you got bullied by our prime minister. That's disgusting. You got bullied by the media just because you wanted to make your own health choice. You got shunned. You got treated like an idiot. Really, it was bullying. It was severe bullying. If you want to talk about hate laws and how, Canada wants to bring in, and in Europe they want to bring in these hate laws so that they can control dissent. Well, unfortunately, if only we could, decide, general public on what is a hate crime. Online bullying is supposed to be a hate crime. Well, many people, and I have 3 vaccines, and I've had COVID 5 times, and none of them, though the first one was a little serious, none of the ones after were very serious. And now I have to worry and hope that I don't have a blood clot that is formed because of the vaccine that I took, because we weren't told about these risks. They didn't talk about it. They were basically told and bullied into getting a vaccine. And now we find out after the fact that even in October 2021, I'll try to get to that slide, that they knew very well that the vaccine could cause heart problems. And the creator of the mRNA technology himself was saying the vaccine isn't using my technology properly. And then, there's the whole idea that they didn't really test it other than on, 8 mice. They didn't really test it a whole lot before they injected it with us. And we're really essentially bullied and forced into this. So it's wild that we're having less and less choice when we should be coming with all these new technologies. Life should become easier, more peaceful, less stressful. We should have freedom and happiness and time to be creative. And we should progress as a society because we have a big, large population. Elon Musk has said it. If we had 1 trillion people on the planet, we'd have, what was it? He said 10,000, 1,000 or 10,000 Mozarts living on the planet at any given time. He doesn't seem, and many don't see overpopulation as a problem, which is a big fear factor of the World Economic Forum. They're saying that, a big factor towards human extinction is way overpopulation, and now we've got populations going down. So let's see what the future holds. But more than 2, we should make sure that we peacefully ensure that our freedoms get maintained, and all of us not going to work for whatever amount of time that it takes, and not taking printed out government money, because that'll just bite us in the butt later on. That would definitely be a very peaceful solution. So more than 2/5 of Americans believe civil war is at least somewhat likely in the next 10 years, according to a 2022 survey. A figure that increases to more than half among self-identified strong Republicans. So I bet now that's quite a bit more. We've got participants were asked, looking ahead to the next 10 years, how likely do you think it is that there will be a civil war in this country? Among all U.S. citizens, 43% said civil war was at least somewhat likely. Among strong Democrats and independents, that figure was 40%. But among strong Republicans, 54% said civil war was at least somewhat likely. Even before the 2022 election, when asked if violence would be justified if the other party won the election, 18.3% of Democrats said yes, and 13.8% of Republicans responded in the affirmative. That's sad. That means 18.3% of people who identify as Democrats don't understand what democracy is. But hey, they're allowed to vote anyways. It's okay. Everyone gets to vote. We should all get to express our opinions and our feelings and our views through who we vote for. So Trump should be allowed to run. You can't remove people from the election process unless they performed and are convicted of treason or insurrection. But to be convicted of insurrection, you have to have been performing a treasonous act, which is levying war against the country. And that did not happen. And it's absolutely wild that 18.3% of Democrats, your party is called the Democratic Party. How can you think it's okay to use violence if your party doesn't win? That kind of makes you, that if you're going to use violence, like actual violence, if you're using armed violence to try to overthrow an election, well, that is starting to become insurrection. So lots of Democrats and some Republicans, 13.8, that's still way too high. These numbers should be 0, except for the mentally ill or people who have no capacity for logic, reflection, or, care for others, empathy. This should be at like 1%. This should only be the mentally ill that think that, oh, if my party doesn't win, I think that it is totally okay to go use violence. No, that is not how the democratic process works, folks. So that is that. I believe that was our last slide on that topic. Now, on the topic of politics, this is pretty wild. I think so much more regulation needs to go in. They're doing so much regulation globally against what we can say and do online, what we can hear and see online. Tons of regulation for that. Where's the regulation on politicians? You've got here, I'm on Instagram. You can follow this with me. It's the Politician Trade Tracker. So there's even the subgroup Nancy Pelosi Stock Tracker. And breaking. So how is this legal? You've got people who run committees who oversee companies that even if you're on the committee that oversees the companies that can tell them, you can do this, you can't do that, or they know they're going to pass a law that's going to really negatively or very positively affect a company that's underneath their umbrella, they get to invest, buy and sell those stocks. If they know it's going to tank, and if you know your law is going to tank a company, imagine you're making the law, you know you're going to tank the company or companies that fall under that category. You just put, you could bet against that company in option trading and times 10, times 20 your money. It's wild. Wild, wild, wild. So, previous post that they shared, Tuberville bought puts in U.S. Steel. Turns out he still made bank because, back in 10-11, he bought $15,000 of calls in U.S. Steel. So that would have multiplied his money significantly. Only had to put 15 grand down, but put it on calls. Knew the company was going to go down and makes bank. He's on the committee. So today it is announced that they're being acquired and those calls are up by 170%. So, yep, that is pretty nice. He's on the subcommittee. Yep, so people are on, all politicians, even if you're not on a committee, all the politicians, they can easily talk to each other. They're in the same rooms. They cross each other in the halls. They can trade information. So no politician, if you run for politics, you need to not be playing the game of messing around with companies for your own bank. There's too much bias. It's too easy. They're all insider traders at that point. And if you think about it, are athletes allowed to bet on the games they're in? No, absolutely not. There's a conflict of interest. They can easily throw the game to make sure their team loses because they bet that their team would lose. Politicians can bet against the United States, and they have been in the past. They've bet against the United States economy because they know they can tank it. They can tank it by printing that when they know they're going to print all sorts of money to send to other countries. Oh, it's wild. If you don't think that there's a lot at play here and that there's very powerful people making very big moves and that there needs to be more controls on it, well, you just have to ask yourself, why did it take so long to get the Jeffrey Epstein client list? How did he commit suicide in prison? These are not normal things. So yeah, I think many of us are going to be interested to find out who is on the Epstein list. But is this kind of be one of those rulings? Some rulings, it's kind of like, okay, let's just sacrifice a few lambs, a few low-level players, so that we're all off the hook. And all the angry people about this whole the horrific child sex exploitation issue. How serious is this going to be? So if you look at it, of the 177 people that are going to be listed, it's friends. Okay, that's good. I want to know who Epstein's friends are. The recruiters. Yeah, I want to know the people who recruited children to go to this island. And victims. Okay, so what is it going to be like? Is it going to be 150 victims and 27 evildoers? Is it going to be 170 victims and 7 evildoers? I've got a problem with this. So let's see how this turns out. It took a judge to make this happen. It took a judge forcing something through just so that something that it just seems natural. No matter what political party you're for, if you're for no political party, even if you believe, whether you believe in democracy or dictatorship, I think anyone in the world, they could be hard, staunch, pro-dictatorship. And if you ask them, do you think we should find out the type of people that abuse children? And I think they'd say, yeah, those are some evil people. Let's get them punished. Let's get them out of society. Let's make sure they don't cause more harm. But no, it's taken years, and it's taken a judge forcing it down. Now, we'll talk about this more in another episode. I applaud the people that are still here in the live stream. If you're here for the mini episode, I don't know if this is going to make it to a mini episode. I don't know how much of a hurry I'm in to get demonetized, but here's a big one. From the same people, my issue with the last 2 years and the pandemic or plandemic is from the same people who bring you the food pyramid telling you that, General Mills and Kellogg's cereal with all their sugar is better for you than eggs. By the way, I eat 6 eggs and 2 pieces of bacon every morning, and my health's good because I avoid sugar at all costs. As soon as I start to eat sugar, guess what? I start to get love handles, shorter of breath, poor attention span. Sugar will lead to depression, diabetes, dementia, heart disease, cancer, all sorts of problems. Not all of them, and not necessarily in that order, but sugar is a main issue. But guess what? U.S. life expectancy has dropped in 2021, second year in a row. So what is going on, folks? You've got, 2019, 79 was the age, now down to 76.1 in the United States. U.S. life expectancy is falling to its lowest levels since 1996. So main media is of course having to report on this. They can't ignore this. They'll look too complacent and too much part of this whole, billionaires owning their companies, and they'll kind of be, if they don't talk about it, it'll be even more evident to people that what they say and do is controlled. But the contributors: drug overdoses, heart disease, suicide, and chronic liver disease. However, the real deal is being brought to us by life insurance companies. So life insurance actuaries are finding out that more people are continuing to die at alarming rates, even more than before the pandemic. And it can't be accounted for by COVID. My dad's 80, and COVID still didn't kill him, even though he got COVID at the hospital, where he was at the hospital and he could have died for what brought him to the hospital, and then he got COVID at the hospital and he still didn't die. He also had COVID before the powers that be, the media and whatnot, were willing to admit that COVID exists. He had COVID back in December 2019. I got it January 1st. And we were both pretty scared. He ended up being on a breathing machine because of that. But he's had COVID. I've had COVID 5 times since. I've had 3 vaccines. He's had 5 vaccines. I just hope that our hearts will be fine, because there was medical journals saying that, hey, these type of mRNA vaccines could have some, how the journals wrote it, very small issues with heart disease and death. So many of them are, of the people who are dying. So it's funny, insurance companies are the ones bringing us this information. They're kind of sounding the alarm. They're like, hey, we're losing money. What's going on here? People are dying that should not be dying. And they're saying many of the people who are dying are working age people who are in the prime of their life, who are suffering deaths from cardiac and neurological disorders. In the UK, deaths among 20 to 44-year-olds in the first quarter of 2023 were similar to the same time frame in 2021, at the peak of COVID deaths, and above baselines for the years before the pandemic. Life insurers have been consistently sounding the alarm over these unexpected or excess deaths, which claimed 158,000 more Americans in the first 9 months of 2023 in the same period as 2019. Now, if you want really good information on this, and really entertaining. Please check out Russell Brand. These slides are from Russell Brand's show. He's been covering this from the very beginning. I just want my car community to also be talking about what's going on at large. And if this really upsets people, just let me know. I'm not here to upset anyone. I just think it's great if we're all aware of the various things that are going on. And some of these are pretty wild, and I feel obliged to talk about them to make sure that you've seen this all. So meet Kevin, great place to hear about stocks and somewhat about what's going on socially and politically, and of course, and sometimes amazing for political legal coverage. He's not a lawyer, but fantastic mind, as well as Russell Brand, very interesting character. So yeah, life insurance. Life insurers have been kind of going, what's going on? We've got these excess deaths that should not be occurring. 158,000 more Americans in the first 9 months of 2023 than in the same period for 2019. With the worst of COVID behind us, annual deaths, so this is from The Hill, annual deaths for all causes should be back to pre-pandemic levels or even lower because of the loss of so many sick and infirm Americans. So basically what this is saying is a lot of not so healthy people were unfortunately, they're deceased. COVID took them out, and it took them out of the people who are living now who could possibly die from various things. So essentially, if you see the population fitting into here, and on either end, very young and very old, you have people who are kind of borderline really unhealthy, and then you have variations of people. Let's say in the middle, it's the healthiest of people. Well, the people at the extremes, they're gone. The least healthy people are gone because of the pandemic. And now you're left with a healthier group, you could say, a less at-risk group, but deaths are higher. So this is very weird. So instead, the death toll remains alarming, disturbing, and deserving of urgent attention, according to insurance industry articles. Nonetheless, America's chief health manager, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, opted in September to archive its excess deaths webpage with a note stating, so this is wild. Remember, the Disease Control and Prevention Center, is the government group, institution that is taking care of our health, protecting us, keeping us safe. We pay taxes. Well, you pay taxes in the States. We pay taxes for our healthcare system. So it's like essentially our health protectors are saying, yeah, you know what? We're not going to keep data on this anymore. We're not going to share data with you anymore. We used to post excess deaths and let you know. But now we're not going to do that anymore. And remember, there's 158,000 extra excess deaths according to health insurers. How many people have health insurance? I'd love to know in the comments. Do you have health insurance? I don't know if it's 1 out of 10 people that has health insurance, but if someone wants to Google that and throw it in the comments section, I've got a question for you all. How many people do you think, and someone please Google the actual answer, how many people do you think have life insurance in the United States? Health insurance costs money. I'd be surprised if more than half of Americans have health insurance. So let's say if half of the US population has health insurance, and insurance companies are saying, hey, we're paying out, they don't like paying out, they're paying out an extra 158,000 people this year so far in 2023, then normal excess deaths. So they're paying out more people than they would expect to pay out. They're saying something's really wrong. And if that's half the population, well, then we can assume and we can speculate that we should have to double that number for the whole population. If only 10% of the US population has health insurance, well, then we have to do times 10 on that number. And then that's starting to become extremely scary. So I'd love to know how many people have health insurance in the United States. So you've got the Center for Disease Control and Prevention saying, well, the data set will no longer be updated. It means we're not going to tell you. They're going to hide information from us about excess deaths. Yeah, they don't want people wondering, could these excess deaths be because of the poisonous crap that we're eating, the water not being clean enough, the poisonous crap because they put sugar in everything and they try to lie to us and say that sugary cereal is better for us than eggs? Could it be that meat is becoming so expensive that maybe people will gladly eat their cricket protein in 10 years from now? I don't know. Is it because the vaccines create blood clots? I don't know. So unlike in the pandemic, but we should be allowed to ask questions, just like we should be able to ask questions and come to our own opinions and conclusions and not be cyberbullied and media bullied into getting a vaccine. I took 3. I'm not saying this for myself. I'm not upset for myself. I'm upset for individuals who were treated like complete idiots, who lost their jobs, who got shamed, who lost all sorts of freedoms because they didn't want to get a vaccine. That turns out may have been worse for us than actual COVID. So unlike in the pandemic's early phase, these deaths are somehow, well, they're not primarily among the old. So unlike in the pandemic's early phase, where mostly older people were dying, the people who are dying now, we see them. Tennis stars, athletes, soccer players, young people playing sports are dying of heart attacks. Oh, they had a blood clot. What? Young athletes, these aren't the type of people who are morbidly obese, who are eating just pure sugar and they've, maxed out the capacity of their own body's capacity to clean itself, to be its own filtration system. No, these aren't people that have destroyed their kidneys, liver, and heart and brain from alcohol and sugar abuse for decades. These are young athletic people. WB says a very small number of people in the US do not have health insurance. The government subsidizes insurance depending on your income. Well, thank you very much, WB. I really appreciate you getting back to us with that. So for people during the pandemic, mostly much older people were passing away. Now, it's not the case. It's healthy people. So for people 65 and over, deaths in the second quarter of 2023 were 6% below the pre-pandemic norm, according to a new report from the Society of Actuaries. So that's like the group of insurers. Mortality was 26% higher among insured. So this is wild. Listen up to this. Mortality, people dying, was 26% higher among insured 35 to 44-year-olds and 19% higher for 25 to 34-year-olds. This is all your working people, all your people who have the energy also to oppose the loss of freedom. Continuing a death spike that peaked in the third quarter of 2021 at a staggering 101% and 79% above normal. So far more people who are, 35 to 45 years of age and 25 to 34 years of age, people who can, have the energy to verbally express their dissent and their juxtaposition to what's being pushed on or forced onto us. People who can have a louder voice. People who can say, you know what? We're all not going to go to work because you're making it so that we can't vote for someone. So no violence needed. None of us are going to go to work. You're taking away our choice to express ourselves through our vote. No one's working until, no matter who it is, whether Vivek gets taken off the ballot, which he actually went ahead and said, you know what, I'm taking myself off the ballot for Colorado. And he encouraged his colleagues to do so. And all the Republicans should remove themselves from the ballot, saying, you know what, Colorado, you can't just say you elected a Democrat. No Republican ran. 0 Republicans ran because this was a farce against democracy. This was an attack against democracy. This is one of the biggest undemocratic actions that I certainly ever remember being actually performed by judges who should know better, who should read the law, who should read into the law so much better. So COVID-19 claims do not fully explain the increase in incurred claim incidents. The society said COVID-19 deaths dropped by 84% from the first 3 quarters of 2021 to the same period in 2023. So essentially, insurance companies are saying COVID deaths have really gone down, tremendously gone down compared from 2021 to now. So in 2021, many more, now so many less. And that's where the issue arises. If there's so many less COVID deaths, why are the deaths higher? So therein lies the most pressing question for insurers, epidemiologists, and health agency officials. Why is the traditionally healthiest sector of our society, young, employed, insured workers, dying at such rates? Public health officials aggressively oversaw the pandemic response, for better or for worse. So whether you think they did a great job or a bad job, the Hill is saying, who cares whether you think they did a great job or a horrible job? What we should point out and notice is that public health officials were so aggressive with health measures. They were violent. They bullied. They cyberbullied. They media bullied. They shamed. They shunned. They did everything to make sure everyone gets a vaccine. People had their jobs taken away from them. Government workers, like healthcare professionals, people in the military, had their job removed from them. Like South Park says, they took our job. They took our jobs. That's serious. When people take your job, darn straight you've got a reason to, maybe go and protest a good amount. Not to, protest like Black Lives Matter protested, and the Democratic Party allowed that for, 6 or 8 months of burning down cities. Not that kind of protest. That maybe could be considered an insurrection. Far more so than what happened on January 6th on the Capitol Hill. Black Lives Matter did a whole lot more damage for a whole much longer period of time, did not follow rules. They certainly didn't just go home quietly and, leave the city when they were asked to. They burnt things down. So you've got the government health officials being extremely, I'd even go as far as saying violent with Heck, our prime minister said things that were unacceptable, shaming people, bullying people into getting a vaccine, telling them that they won't be able to go to, basically you won't be able to get on a plane, train, or go to the gym. You can't go to the gym if you don't have a vaccine. You're not allowed to question whether it's good for your health or not. And now it's like, oh, yeah, maybe it's not that good for your health. Maybe it causes blood clots. But they knew in 2021 when they were shaming and forcing people into all this. So why aren't they looking into this? Why don't they use 1/10 of the energy they used to push the vaccines on us to actually look into whether these vaccines are good or not? Why do they not ensure that all the money they gave to Big Pharma to make the vaccines that potentially suck, and are potentially worse for us than COVID, why aren't they getting that money back? It's billions of dollars. It's inflation. It's part of what is causing groceries to be so darn expensive. It's a form of taxation. How much our government spend is directly related. It's just a form of taxation, folks. So in the United Kingdom, where post-pandemic excess deaths in similar demographics also persist, a government-funded independent inquiry is underway. So with each passing week of the COVID inquiry, the BBC reported recently, it is clear there were deep flaws in the way decisions were made and information provided during the pandemic. Yeah, they didn't tell us that they were potentially leading to blood clots or death. They didn't tell us that. And that's a fact. I'm going to go to the medical journal. The US government had a medical journal. They weren't talking about it, but in a US, published by the US government in a medical journal, they talked about anaphylaxis and death, heart disease. So the United States needs such an examination of the measures taken to fight the pandemic. This probe by a high-level, unbiased commission should focus on what worked and what did not. So that's from The Hill. Good source, it looks like. Lockdowns limited access to education, social interaction, and healthcare with documented harm to childhood development, mental health, and very much the economy. Remember if you were too close to our neighbors, the police could come and give us all sorts of trouble. If our neighbors came over into our home because we're lonely and depressed and maybe even feeling, really depressed and suicidal. No, you can't, that social interaction, you can't go to the gym, you can't socialize with your neighbors, you can talk to them from across the street, but you got to treat each other, it's got to be really weird. So treatment protocols dictated how doctors should deliver COVID care, primarily in hospitals and with expensive medicines, and limited early access to generic drugs that might have helped. Well, the generic drugs were banned. Remember, it was only, this is the only solution. Only the vaccine will work. And it turned out they said that it would prevent the spread, it would prevent spreading it and getting it. And it turns out that the vaccine, this is a fact. I'm not some crazy head here just saying anything off the top of my head. Vaccines did not prevent getting COVID. I have 3 vaccines. I've had COVID 5 times. My dad has 5 vaccines. He got COVID again. I don't know how many times he's had it. I think that was his 3rd time. He got it in the hospital. So, and he just got his booster a month and a half ago. So a month and a half ago. And my parents had told me, oh, we just got our booster. And I was like, okay. If we would have talked about it before, I would have said, don't do it. It's not worth it. It's, in my opinion. And my dad got COVID. And it was pretty bad. It was actually really bad. It bedrid him. He could have died. He had just gotten out of the hospital, gets home, gets COVID, couldn't do anything, complete bedridden, and he's had 5 vaccines. So we got told that it would prevent, we were lied to. They were wrong. And, I think it would go a long way if governments could just come out and say, we messed up. People who have, paralysis from this, people who have brain damage or heart damage or who die from this, you will be compensated. We'll make sure. Big Pharma, they're not going to be happy with us. They probably won't send us any money when it comes to lobby money season. We won't get any money for lobby money season, but we're going to make sure that they pay for you. X company made $100 billion of profit. Well, they're going to end up losing $100 billion. They're going to lose the $100 billion and another $100 billion because they're responsible for the crap that they told us works. And we're so very, very, very sorry for pushing you, shaming you into getting those vaccines. We're so sorry that we treated you like a crazy nut job and an idiot if you didn't. We're so sorry that we took your job away, that the government, if they compensate us, well, they're going to print money and we're all going to have to pay for it. Get the money from the people that made the crap. So generic drugs could have helped possibly. They're also seen, if you took the horse pills, if you talked about the horse pills, you're seen as a complete fool. It was a wild time. Vaccines were given to more than 270 million people, among them babies, pregnant women, and workers under employer mandates. Just a few months ago, the United States was talking about having kind of more or less almost forcing kids to get vaccines all through childhood. It'd been like 70 COVID vaccines from when you're born to when it's like, okay, well, now you can choose. They were thinking about forcing kids to get vaccines. That's wild. Absolutely wild. The therapeutics warp speed emergency use and authorization must be part of any post-pandemic analysis. So yeah, they did this warp speed drive on let's throw in these emergency measures. Let's, destroy the economy, destroy families, get couples to divorce because they can only talk to each other. And, some of them are locked into 20 by 20 apartments. Who cares? Let's just, mess around and find out. In light of more than 1 million reports of possible harm to the vaccine adverse events reporting system and a new Yale University study validating a chronic post-vaccination syndrome. So I'm not a crackhead. Don't smoke crack here, folks. I wait until facts come out, and the only facts that were allowed to come out, and here's my problem with Canada trying to control what gets seen on, YouTube, Facebook, the various media sources. And the problem I have with governments deciding what is misinformation and what is hateful speech. Heck, next pandemic, they could say if you're against it or if you're against the next fear-mongering campaign that they have, if you're like, no, you know what, this isn't real, this is wrong, I'm not following along, or just, the idea. free for all immigration, just complete open borders. Let's let everyone in. You come in and you're threatening police officers to put them 6 feet under the ground and you're dressed like a jihadist. Well, if you say you don't want that in your country, well, you're a racist. That's a hate crime. You go to jail. Well, in Europe, people are going to jail for what they say on the internet. That's not democracy. You need to let people express and sometimes people are going to express wrong and stupid things. Well, let them F around and find out. Let the internet community say, hey, racist individual, you're an idiot. Like, wake up. Everyone has positive traits, negative traits, and it's an individual thing. It has nothing to do with race or religion. Across all races and religions, you have people who have a mixture of really great qualities and sometimes really horrible qualities. And sometimes people have no good qualities and no bad qualities. They're just really boring. Maybe that's me. We're all a hodgepodge, a weird stew of all sorts of different types of people. And no matter what group you partake in, whether you're grouped, and we shouldn't be grouped and forced into groups because of our color isn't who we are. Our culture, well, yeah, it's part of our identity and how we behave and how we perceive the world and how we interact with the world. Well, yeah, culture and religion have a part in that. Skin color doesn't, and just because of your religion doesn't make you good or bad. But I find that often we're even being divided into, Democrats and Republicans, and go fight it out. And all people's energy goes into fighting it out, whether it's better to be a Democrat or a Republican. And we all miss the much more important question of where are our freedoms? Where are our friends? Why is media trying to make it so I don't have friends? Why, during the pandemic, I can't have friends? Mentally, we need this. We need social interaction. Why are we being isolated and divided? And where are my freedoms? We need to remind ourselves of that question. Where are my freedoms? So Yale University study validates a chronic post-vaccination syndrome. Finally, government officials who sanctioned unprecedented censorship of dissent. So YouTube cutting people off if you talked about COVID, if you weren't in agreement. That's dissent, not being in an agreement. So there's this whole censorship of those who dissent. Enforcing pandemic measures through media pressure must be called to account. Yes, absolutely, 100%. Actuaries and industry analysts predict excess deaths will continue among people with life insurance through 2030. So the insurance companies, they're like ringing the bell. They're like, man, well, why are we paying for this? This isn't our responsibility. Other people made our clients sick. They should have to pay. That's not what they're saying yet, but it's pretty obvious that when you're a business, your goal isn't to lose all sorts of money. And nor necessarily should they. They insured people not knowing that they might have some crap that at a certain percentage is bad for you and overall does not prevent COVID, overall does not prevent transmission. So it's anticipated that these deaths are to be highest among those that are at younger ages. So the actuaries are saying anticipated to be highest at younger ages. So they think they're going to be paying for young people these big insurance policies because they shouldn't be dying, but somehow they are. So this prediction defies normal expectations of mortality for a robust population of people with life insurance. Now consider how other disability-afflicted, poorly insured Americans may fare. To ensure future generations are protected and to be ready for the possibility of another pandemic, Congress needs to assess what worked and what did not. No kidding. So I've got it here. I'm going to try to find it. I took a nice screenshot of this, so I think it's in my main notes for the evening's show, and that's going to be the end of this evening's show. Let me know in the post comments if you really don't like the social. If you want me to just stick to cars, of course, that's my specialty. I can definitely stick to cars and only talk about subjects that are really killing me, when, really biting me and burning me inside when I really have to. or I can maybe make a side channel. But I like to talk about not just vehicles. We're a community here. I wanted to share this with my friends. Not a crackpot, despite that photo right there. Figured you probably maybe saw it in the little photos. Might as well blow it up. Yes, I didn't have crazy wild hair. Just playing around with the poodles. They're pretty cuddly here. So I found on the US website, government website, there is talk here. And I don't know what's happened to it. I'm really sorry. We'll have to bring that to the next live. Because it was a nice slide back from October 2021 saying in a government document from a medical journal saying that the mRNA vaccines would have side effects. I believe it was anaphylaxis. Definitely they talked about heart disease and even death. In small numbers was the wording. And I always like to provide proof. And I'm not sure if my laptop is just going to find it as easily because it was a screenshot off my phone. And of course, the phone is tonight's camera. So I'm really sorry about that. I'll have to drop that slide. Come make it to the next live that we do. Now, with all the holidays going down, actually probably, I don't want to be doing this if Sunday falls on New Year's Eve. But if it's New Year's Day or whatnot, we'll have a live. So we will try to be back here at a regular time on Sunday nights. Folks, thank you so much for watching. Thank you for being part of the community. I really appreciate your kindness and your support and all the feedback and all the information that you add to the show. We make this show together, folks. Thank you so much for making it to the live. Even though you've seen the full show, if you drop for the mini episodes, if you just happen to, you've already seen them before going to bed, if you want to help the channel out, let them just put a playlist on, let it run. That'll really help us out the most. I'm sure the ones that are here, you've all liked and subscribed. You've all been subscribed for quite a while, because if you made it this far to the end of the live, I think I see you more than family. Thank you so much. I wish you all a very, very Merry Christmas. If you just celebrated Hanukkah, I hope you had a fantastic Hanukkah. And in case we don't see each other again until a live before New Year's Eve, just in case family baby stuff gets really hectic, I will wish you a Happy New Year, but I certainly hope to be back here for a Happy New Year. And actually, I think I'm probably going to have to do this next Saturday, because next Saturday, I believe, is going to be, December 30th, if I do the quick little math in my mind. So probably back here next Saturday at 6 or 7 p.m. You'll see the notification. If you turn the bell notification on, you'll always know when I've got a show that's about to come out, whether it's a premiere or a live. Thank you so much for being with us this whole time. You're some troopers, because this is almost a 4-hour show. It's the longest we've ever done. Probably will never have it this long again. The WB, you made it as a finisher. Right on. So we'll see if I can make it out to Florida. We've been looking at it. We want to go to the restaurant with Ridgeview and many of the community here. Come soon, come this winter, but the issue is we're looking at it, and with Layla, basically either have to go alone or Marie and the baby can come, potentially. But then we've got to find a sitter for the babies, for the poodles. They are babies. So we would normally drive down with the poodles, but Layla is a baby and very young, and apparently leaving their head in a car seat can lead like a flathead syndrome, a flathead case, and that can be, pretty not great, and I do have a responsibility to take care of her. So maybe 25 hours driving in the vehicle would not be the best thing. So we will try to get down to Florida to meet up with the viewers, because we really appreciate you all. Thank you so much. Merry Christmas. Take care, everybody, and we wish you, of course, all more cars and more power. And if you do already have your car that you love, the WB, I'm in particular wishing you a little pedal to the metal when you get that Corvette. But just watch out. I'd say my big recommendation, don't turn the technology off, especially if you own a Mustang. Mustang owners that turn off the technology, well, what happens is you start to slide, and as soon as you let go of the pedal, if those wheels are still turning, when you let go of the pedal, if you're not straight, when When those tires bite, they grip and they will take you off in the direction you're pointing. And that's a great way to drive into a tree or a crowd. So that's the little secret to these vehicles these days with all this power. Don't completely turn the technologies off. Take care and have a great night, everybody.